Now I got it. Yeah, I got the message now.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Yeah, let's just start over.
Yep.
So, last night I was on a YouTube with the Vintage Computer Federation, and there were panelists who were in the early history of educational technology. So there was Cynthia Solomon, who worked with Seymour Papert when Logo was being developed, and she saw like the actual turtles on the floor, the robot turtles.
Right.
And then Liza Loop met Steve Wozniak, and she has an early Apple One that she was lugging to school and showing kids how it. This is a computer. Now let's learn assembly language. Imagine that. Um, well, they had integer basic. So that's a, but she's researched a lot over the years, and now she's working on a project called Kepler, which would be an artificial intelligence recommender for educational materials for people motivated to learn, having a specific learning path. So that's an interesting, but she's interested in other areas of research as well. One thing she talked about was active learning. Um, that that's now a priority among national education to not to just have kids sitting in classroom doing drill and practice. So, and then the other panelist was Brian Silverman, who is from MIT, and he made several variations of the Logo language, extensions to it for various computers. So yeah, a lot of experience from the 60s, 70s, and 80s that we can draw upon. Yeah, so um, yeah, so that's recorded. It's on YouTube. But what I was curious about from Barry is his experience with multi-user dungeons being used in education, and the yeah, to explain micromuse a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So in around 1990, I joined a group at Bolt Brannick and Newman,
Yeah.
BBN, the company that really did invent the internet.
Hmm.
And they had a small department there that was doing educational technology research, headed up by Wally Forsythe, who died about 5 years ago. Um, and they had National Science Foundation funding to develop educational content for computers and the internet in these early days, in the early 90s, when basically computers are just becoming available to schools and to school
Yep.
children. And I joined them as a visiting scientist around 1990 and worked on a number of projects, some of which were funded from the NSF to develop software applications, but also was doing unfunded work. And I knew about the MUDs. The MUDs had started around 1987
Hmm.
as a project that, among others, Michael Malden had developed at Cornell. He was is interesting. He was actually trying to develop um, robots that could do natural language processing, and
Interesting.
he needed a contingent of people to talk to the robot, and
Oh,
so he
cool.
recruited the then existing MUDs, the sort of the mid 1985 early MUDs. And that's one of the reasons they became popular because people were going on not only to talk to his robot, Julia, but also to each other. And I discovered the MUDs around 1990 and thought, gee, I wonder if we can adapt these for education for children. So I helped found one that ended up being called Micromuse.
Okay.
And Micromuse well, Micromuse is, by the way, still on the air, although it's really a ghost town. But it was very active in the decade of the 90s.
Mhm.
It mainly ran on a computer at MIT that Hal Abelson had loaned us.
Do you know what type of computer that was?
Yeah, it was a Motorola System 5
Mhm.
machine that Motorola had given them this computer because they had a version of low no version of Lisp. They had
Mhm.
version of Lisp on it. I don't remember the name of the version. I don't know,
Yeah. Yeah.
System
Well,
5.
MIT was the
Yeah.
development of
Anyway,
Lisp.
they had
Yeah.
a version of System 5 Lisp on it, and that's why they had the machine. But it was basically idle because they were really using Hewlett Packard machines mostly in those days. So
Hmm.
he let us have it for Micromuse. So um, we ran Micromuse on that computer for about 5 years, and then he said, "Take the machine physically out of the building; it's yours." We moved up to UMass Lowell for a while, and then
Hmm.
it gradually evolved it to more modest, smaller, but physically smaller, but equally powerful
Okay.
machines. And now it runs on a Sun Ultra machine in my living room.
Nice.
I ran it at BBN for a while on a smaller machine. Forget exactly. I think we ran it on VAX machines. To run on VAX machines, I forget now exactly. Anyhow,
Fascinating. Yep.
um, so it's technically been running for 24 years.
That's so cool. So, like, was it like a BBS where people would dial up back in the day to it, or like, did it have a modem pool, or
No, it
was
was
it
on the
in?
internet. It was always
Yeah.
on the internet, and so you had to be on a computer that had internet access. Which in those early days, it was really, was it Cincinnati? What was the town? One of the towns in Ohio
Hmm.
was one of the early ones that had community access.
Okay. So, like a cafe where people could go and use the internet.
Well, actually,
Yeah.
no, they had a dial-up system. I'm trying to remember which
Right.
it was. It was
Yeah. Remember the days of dial-up networking?
oh yeah. So
Yep.
anyway, but the thing about the MUDs is that you needed a client, and you used the client over the internet to log in.
Okay.
And then it was a buildable world. It was a persistent world. It
Hmm.
had a very primitive programming language, which is object oriented.
Oh, cool.
And so you could build objects. And the very first versions of the MUDs were quite primitive. You basically it was just a web of rooms, a dungeon. You had rooms and exits between rooms, and not much else. I mean, I guess eventually objects, and so the MUDs evolved through a series of evolutions, MUDs and moos and muses, and
Right. Okay.
ours.
So,
So ours was called Muse, and it was Wally Forsythe who proposed the acronym Muse, Multi-User Science Education.
oh, cool. So, like, was that related to your work with the museum, like the science education? Like, did you
Well,
try to
it
bring some of that
it
into
was in
it?
parallel. So
Yeah.
my character Moulton. I'll tell
Hmm.
you, when I was at BBN, and the very first time I logged on to a MUD, or I think it was a MUD, you had to pick a screen name.
Hmm.
So I'm staring out the window of my office at BBN at the intersection of Moulton Street and
Oh, cool. Yeah.
came what was it, Concord Avenue.
Uh-huh.
And I'm staring at the street sign, and I know that I don't want to be known as Concord Avenue.
Okay.
So I
Like,
write down Moulton. So I become Moulton.
that's so cool. Yeah.
And that was around 1990 or so. And so my persona Moulton, and I modeled Moulton after my science museum real person. So in the science museum, I'd go physically, and I had all these little manipulable items, these little
Hmm.
science toys. And I
Yep.
recreated everything. I recreated Moulton on Micromuse
Muse. Hmm.
with essentially the same stuff. And I created a little science museum online. And
Hmm.
so I basically had two versions of myself, the real version on Saturdays and the synthetic version on Micromuse.
Cool.
And that sort of became my avatar, my identity.
Yeah.
And
Now, what's interesting is the manipulative objects, because that was mentioned in last night's talk. That like the Montessori schools, that's what they're using
right,
manipulative rods and things to get more active learning. And I guess for kinesthetic learners, that would help a lot.
yeah.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So, like the parallel to the museum and the online. So, what kind of like experiences, like to translate a manipulative to an online environment? How did that work?
So first of all, you give an object a name, and the name was essentially the same name as you would give it in real life,
Okay.
and you give it a description, which is basically a paragraph of text that what it looked like when you looked at it. but then you
Okay.
gave the behaviors. And the
Okay.
cool thing was that the the Muse or the mud language had ability to code behavior. So you, when you engage with the object, you could pick
Hmm.
it up, you could drop it, and you could do other gestures. You could
Hmm.
define arbitrary gestures, just verbs that would.
Yeah, like a ball drop or
Right,
ball bounce. Yeah.
right. So you and typically the description would cue you into what the available gestures were that you could do with it.
Hmm. Okay.
So then you would code little snippets of code that would give the reactions. The reaction was all done in text. So
Okay. So
you would
like
do a
a
gesture, and then the thing would be like a talking Coke machine that would say, "I'm now dispensing."
so
And
like say you were holding a ball and you want to drop it and do measurements every second. Could it do something like that?
it
Or
could, although the sense of real time wasn't there because it was just simply a reaction. So
okay.
you could put a delay in. In fact, we did put sequences of responses that would have a time delay between them.
Hmm.
Um, but nothing quite so fast as watching something drop. It was because remember you had to send a sentence, and we're only like
Okay.
300 baud, and people had terminals that were only like read.
Yes,
You
I
you had
remember.
to read, and you can read
Okay.
about 30 characters a second. So
Yes, I'm trying to imagine what type of lesson you could do with that. Can you just give us an example?
in fact, you can still log on to Micromuse and go to um,
Yeah, later we'll talk about
the
that.
Science Museum and play with
Mhm.
some of the toys.
Mhm.
So, for example, uh, I remember some of them. One of the things you could do on Micromuse is you could make objects that you couldn't have in real life. So I had a tesseract.
Oh, nice.
So the tesseract, you could pick it up and it would give you a description of itself. And when you
Mhm.
dropped it, it would turn itself inside out. It would
Nice.
so it but you could have really complicated things. So I had a logic puzzle that I stole from Raymond Smullyan,
Mhm.
the Island of Maya, the Knights and
Ah,
Knaves. So we had Knights and Knaves puzzles, which was a whole collection of islands, which literally was taken almost verbatim. Uh,
mm.
and actually, somebody else had previously implemented on a defunct mud. This is interesting. Somebody gave me the database of a defunct mud,
Cool.
which had stuff on it. And I had to, it was like, jigsaw puzzle pieces because you got simply the database. So you
Right.
find an object and find things that connects to. It took me like weeks to reconstruct some of this stuff,
Right.
this defunct database. But I so
Yeah,
I
you know what's interesting? The old adventure games like Infocom,
right,
Zork,
right,
they were based on Lisp, and the
right,
code had objects, rooms, room objects in
right.
rooms, and you could manipulate, take this, move it to this room. So it's the same idea that you're talking about. So you're talking about taking like a Zork game and moving it online and having
Exactly.
many people interacting with it, which is like your
Yeah.
multi-role player games today. Yeah.
In fact, at at Bell Laboratories around 1975, when they had the first Unix machines, Bell Laboratories Unix,
Hmm.
there was a copy of the very first dungeon game, the one that the guy at
Yeah, the
BBN,
adventure,
yeah,
the
adventure, yeah, the
classic, yeah,
Colossal Cave Adventure.
right,
So there was a guy at BBN who had written Colossal Cave Adventure in some language, I don't remember what language, and then somebody translated it into Fortran. And
hmm,
because IBM had Fortran, I um, installed it on the IBM computer, the IBM 360 computer at Bell Laboratories. I
nice,
installed a copy of Adventure, the
hmm,
Fortran translation of it. So I was very familiar with the Adventure game.
right,
So in the late 80s, when Tim Maudlin, is it Tim Maudlin? I think that's his name. Or no, Michael Maudlin.
hmm,
I think that the guy at Carnegie Mellon who developed Julia, the one of the very first conversational robots.
hmm,
Um, so I had discovered, oh, it was, yeah, I know what it was. The mud he put it on was called Tiny Tim, which was
Okay.
MIT backwards.
Oh, nice.
That's
Tim, yeah.
that's where the Tim came from.
Cute.
And he was Dr. Fuzzy, I think that was his.
Yeah,
Yeah,
fuzzy
Michael
logic. Yeah.
Maudlin was Dr. Fuzzy, and Tiny Tim was the machine. And that time it was running at Worcester Polytechnic, I think the version that I got onto in '87. He
Hmm.
had a version running at Carnegie Mellon, but they ported it over. And Larry Ford added programmability to the original code. You only had exits, so the only way you could program it was you create exits that had
Hmm.
behavior, and that was
Okay.
kind of awkward. And then they eventually developed where you could create objects in object-oriented language and put code on them. So the Muse actually had a pretty powerful but arcane, hard to learn, but powerful
Hmm.
language. And so one of the first things you build is you build a red balloon. And
Hmm.
when you let it go, it flies away. Right?
Hmm. Okay.
And eventually you learn to build more complicated stuff. So I eventually learned to build uh, logic puzzles and science toys that had actions. Some of them I cribbed off of other sites. Some of them were original.
Hmm.
I even wrote a play
Yep.
based on Hofstadter's Tortoise, an Achilles
Yep.
and the Tortoise. I created a play with a conversation between Achilles and the Tortoise, but it wasn't a conversation that Hofstadter wrote. It was a conversation that I authored.
Cool.
And,
Yeah,
but it
that,
was
I love
about
that book.
Alan Turing. They,
Okay.
they would talk about Alan Turing.
Hmm.
Um, and so you could go to the play and the characters would recite the lines of the play. Um, we had spaceships that you could actually fly because we had a model of the solar system.
Oh,
So they actually
nice.
had, and I didn't do the spaceship work, another guy did that. But you could have enterable objects. So you could
Okay.
take a car or any enterable object and control it from the inside of the object.
So, like, would it follow the planetary rules of
Yeah,
dynamics? And yeah, so you
yeah,
could
they
slingshot off Jupiter and go
right,
somewhere.
right.
Yeah.
The guy who developed the space code actually worked out, the mechanical laws of gravitational mechanics.
Cool.
So you could go into space and visit the moon and
Hmm.
other planets and fly your spaceship. That was pretty complicated. That was a guy who was studying aeronautics and astronautics.
Yeah, and I'll just mention, like, in the movie Hidden Figures, they show the complication of the math, the analytic geometry to
Right,
get the ship back into the ocean at the right spot.
right,
And it turned out converting an elliptical orbit to a parabolic orbit.
right.
They mentioned
So,
that. I found that
yeah.
fascinating.
So the space dynamics was a pretty complicated
Hmm.
feature of it. But the neat, cool thing was that any participant could create content. And so people would create, for example, I had a friend who was a grad student at Harvard, and he created a couple of Narnia adventures,
Nice.
reinstantiated these Narnia adventures. And his innovation was that up until then, most of the activities were single user. That is, a single user could do the activity.
Hmm.
He created a Narnia adventure where you needed a team of 4 cooperating participants to solve the puzzle because you had to be on opposite
Yep.
sides of a door or something to.
Okay. Yeah, that's fascinating that it
So you
requires
could
cooperation.
so
Yeah.
the characters can talk to each other because it was a conversational room, but you can
Hmm.
also then cooperate with some object to where you need 2 or more people to cooperate. So there was one where 4 people had to sit in a chair, 4 chairs in a room, and when all 4 people were sitting in the room, then the climax event occurred. And
Hmm. Okay. Yeah. You needed the logic
right.
to be satisfied, and then the game can progress to a new
So you had
experience. Yeah.
a multi-participant puzzles and single participant puzzles. Um, and of course, and that was state of the art in the '90s. That was state of the art because
Yeah.
this is just before the World Wide Web. Because World Wide Web
Right.
ends around '93.
Right. So this is all text, right?
It's all text. It's all
Yep.
plain text.
Hmm.
Though with ASCII you could have colored adorned.
Yeah, and like with Play-Doh, they were able to do
Yeah,
graphics on the
yeah,
terminals that were so expensive, but
yeah.
now you can do Play-Doh on
Right.
your old computers now.
But
Yeah.
yeah, you could do ASCII because it was monofont. You could do ASCII graphics.
Right. Yeah, so like for kids who are good at reading that or auditory, see what would be interesting is to take some of that, put it through a speech synthesizer, and have it read to you the descriptions for people who are more auditory. That
One of
yeah,
one of the cool things is that when Micromuse got going, initially before it went to MIT, it was running on a small Sun 3 machine.
hmm
An undergraduate at Cal State Fresno had started it on a little Sun 3 machine at
right,
Cal State Fresno. And before he graduated, he wanted to have it continue someplace. And basically, that's how I ended up inheriting the system
yeah,
and
sure. People
migrating it.
put so much
Here,
effort into it, they want
but
it.
here's the funny thing. There were a number of people on it, including I think there were three teenage girls who were on it, who I didn't know who they were, but
Okay,
because they had screen names. But in those days, Hal Abelson had two grad students who would come to BBN once a week to talk about developing educational software. And once in a while, Hal would come with them. So one time, Hal Abelson comes over to BBN and he gets there just before lunch. So we go up to the lunchroom, sit at a big round table, and I knew who he was, but I had never actually met him. And we sit at the round table, and Hal starts to tell a story. He says, he says, I have a teenage daughter who's never shown any interest in computers, but she and two of her friends have found this interesting site that they're playing on, and he describes it. And I go, Hal, are you talking about micromud? And he says, you've heard of it? I said, Hal, I'm molten on micromud. He said, you're molten?
you're molten, yeah. It's fascinating how people didn't know each other. I
Yeah.
remember when
So it turned
AOL
out it was his
first.
daughter. It turned out it was Hal Abelson's daughter and two of her friends. So that spring, when the guy at the undergraduate at Cal State Fresno was about to graduate, he made a trip to Boston on purpose to see me, and we went down to MIT to
Mhm.
see Hal and his daughter. And
Okay.
at that point, I sprung on Hal the notion that Jin, Stan Lim was gonna graduate, and on
hmm
the spot, Hal gives us this Motorola machine
Cool.
to use, and we spent a week porting the code over to this new machine,
Right.
and it ran on this machine in Hal Abelson's lab for several years before he finally said, "Take the machine." But here's the other thing: his daughter uh, also started a mud of her own on on,
Cool.
on Hal's own HP machine in Hal's office, and she
Okay.
ran her own mud for a while she was a teenager, and then oh, by the way, her name is Amanda Abelson. So Amanda and Hal co-wrote a book on Logo for the Mac.
Okay.
And on the back cover of the book, you see a picture of them standing back to back. On the right
hmm
side, there's Hal Abelson, professor of artificial intelligence, and Amanda Abelson, who runs a mud.
Nice.
And the cool thing is that because of the muds, this is how Amanda became interested in computers. Because up to that time, she was not about to compete with her father. So
Right.
she stayed away from computers
Okay.
and then because of the muds, she got sufficiently intrigued, and of course, so did Hal. Hal was Wintermute. Hal's name on the mud was Wintermute, and I can't remember what Amanda's character name was. Anyhow, so that's how I got hooked up with Hal Abelson and got a home for the system. We moved it from MIT to UMass Lowell. There's another story in there, and then to BBN, and now it's in my living room.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, have you ever thought about like saving the source code and putting it on the Internet Archive
It is,
for it to
and
be?
we basically released the code, and there are many dialects. So
hmm
there were the original Mud, and then there was the what was the one that Larry Ford? Mud. There was Mush, Mud, Mush, Moo, and Muse, and
Okay.
okay. And so most of that code eventually got open source,
hmm
including our code is open source. It's been open source for I don't know 25 years now. And
Okay,
there's one
later,
or
if
two,
you send me a link to it, I'd like to look at it.
yeah, there's
Yeah.
one or two other sites that I think may be running either that same code or a descendant of that code.
Okay, so where is it running now, other than your
So
living room?
Micromuse itself runs on a Sun Ultra machine in my living room,
Okay, so
running
it's Unix, right?
it's running System 5, I think version 8 or 9. It's an old
Mm-hmm.
version. It's running
Yeah.
version 8 or 9 of System V, System 5 Unix on
Mm-hmm.
a Sun Ultra machine.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the version of the code that basically was frozen around 1995, I think,
Okay,
93 to 95.
sure.
Although the database can be anything because the participants create the database.
So like, could you use a MySQL if you wanted to, or like, what is it? What database are you using currently?
It doesn't use a SQL database. It basically it's its own
Files.
database. It saves its own database in its own flat file format. So
Yeah, flat files.
yeah.
Okay, so it
So
is theoretically possible. Yeah.
an object is either a room, an exit, an object, or a character.
Okay,
A character can be a robot. I mean,
cool.
and every object has a serial number, and then it's
Okay.
just saved as a flat file.
Okay, makes sense. So like let's would yeah, it could be hydrated into an
Right.
object in
Yeah.
the code. Yeah.
So, in fact, because they're saved as flat files, I gained access to a couple of databases of other MUDs and was
Nice.
able to extract content from them
That's cool.
the hard way and reinstantiate it.
Yeah, but that's great. You just zip it up and it's saved. Yeah. Any state you
Yeah.
want to zip up. Yeah.
One of the hardest ones was the restaurant at the end of the universe, which I deconstructed from somebody else's database and recreated on Micromuse.
Mhm.
So there were several of them that I reconstituted that way from other sites, um, or just wrote from scratch, sort of knowing what they were. Um,
Yep.
Various puzzles and activities and things.
Yep.
And the kids are a lot of teenagers on it, and they did a lot of the work and created a lot of content. So there's that's a ghost town today because we're talking about work that was done in the mid '90s.
Right, but that's fascinating that the kids had enough experience they were able to design their own
Oh yeah,
content, and that I would love to see go forward,
yeah,
where young people can contribute to the evolution of a course. Like the
yeah.
professor shouldn't know everything, and it's that creativity that comes out of the interaction that can enhance new paths, new branches in a course.
There was an activity called coding with Cooter. Cooter CDR is
Okay.
CDR was the name of a command in assembly language.
Okay.
Something in decrement the register, I think.
Got it. Oh, yeah.
Anyway,
Cedar in Lisp. There's a
in
Cedar. Yeah.
yeah, code CDR something decrement the register. I can't remember what the C stood for.
Yeah.
Anyhow,
Well, car is contents of address register. Cedar is contents of the data register. It's like the rest of the
yeah.
list. Yeah.
So
First.
so
Yeah.
that was an early activity, and Cynthia Solomon might actually have known about it. Maybe
Probably.
Bruckman, I think, did something with it. So the notion of learning to write code on a mud,
Oh, cool.
and it was object oriented, which in those days was pretty new stuff.
Right.
So there was a sort of the golden era, the heyday of coding in MUDs. There were a couple of public schools that I gave access to. I actually gave them computers and terminals and things that were being retired from DEC and others.
Yep. That's what people are doing. They're collecting old stuff now. People have
Right.
their basements full of
So
stuff.
so
Yeah.
there were a couple of schools that had MUDs and they were used in the school with the teachers and the students, and they would do projects. They would take their subjects and create little content on the MUD and share it with their students. And of course, they were learning spelling and grammar and coding and
Oh,
and
isn't that amazing? Yeah, it's integrated learning.
right.
All your subjects in one place and
Yeah.
share. You have transitions between subjects. It's
Yeah,
yeah.
the principal at one little school was absolutely amazed at how quickly these students were gaining ground in their language skills and spelling and punctuation
Hmm.
and the the applied math and
Yeah, when it's all text, it's using your imagination to
right
visualize what you're looking at
pictures
rather
in
than
your head.
having the picture thrust in front of you
We,
like
we,
today.
we won
Yeah.
a number of prizes back in those days, and some of the
Wow.
students won prizes for their work.
Hmm.
And by the end of the 90s, with the advent of the dot-com boom
Sure.
and the World Wide Web, the era of the MUDs kind of faded into the niche background. There were still a few diehards in it, but it basically
Right.
faded away pretty much after the millennium.
Yeah, because then you had all the online services getting on the internet.
Right,
So yeah, and then yeah, like there was CompuServe online education that Margaret Morabito worked on.
right.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm fascinated by what we had, the value that we had,
It
and
was very
yeah,
heady, because you're talking about, you're on 1,200 baud lines on
yeah,
a terminal, and this is the best, this was the frontier back in those days. Of course, the frontier moved beyond it. Uh,
yep, yeah. I had a 2400 baud modem eventually. Yeah.
but I was sort of playing, the role of Moulton to these, a few dozen really bright kids. We had some really
Hmm.
bright kids on.
Yeah.
And it was a very heady time, and these kids were learning like crazy. They were just learning.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if we keep these resources alive, they could become paths for motivated students to explore specific topics. Like, say, someone's interested in physics
Yeah,
and they want this could be put into a recommendation engine like Liza Loop is developing.
yeah.
And based on the profile, if you see that this person is really highly motivated to learn physics, it could be like recommended as an emulation that they go to the Internet Archive and play with online. And it's text to really, and even for like a historian, someone interested in the history of education could use that to experience the text interaction and the imagination that it required. Okay, you're in a spaceship, you're going to Mars, and uh-oh, here's radiation coming from the sun. What do you do? Yeah.
So from a historical point of view, it was important pioneering work.
Mm-hmm.
It sort of demonstrated the possibility, and of course, it was just totally unfunded. Micromuse was completely unfunded. They were
And that's what's
machines that were
amazing. Yeah.
machines that were given to us because they were basically, surplus and retired machines. So there was no money involved.
Yeah, and think about the open source movement. People are volunteering to code. They're at hundreds of hours sometimes
Right.
to code because they love the topic. They want to contribute something of their knowledge. And
And it was
that's,
community
yeah,
building. The other
yeah,
thing was
community.
so
Hmm.
we were on the one hand, we were building community. We had online virtual communities. So
Hmm.
part of it was the community building aspect without regard to the technology. And then there was the technology half of it, which is creating content, which is involved coding and all. So you had
Sure,
this mix of community and socializing and also, conversing in text, the chat mode. Uh,
sure.
and it was quite a remarkable passage in the early, for about 5 years in the early 90s until it
Yep.
got sort of overtaken by the World Wide Web.
Right. I guess Plato had a similar uh, evolution because a lot of the things like the message boards and interactive chat,
Right.
a lot of the concepts evolved from those students who
Yeah.
had it.
I mean,
Yeah,
we added a web server. A 14-year-old boy installed Apache for the first version of it.
cool.
And you can, by the way, you can still go on and still see his original page.
Wow.
You can. I mean, my very first web page was on. It still is up on Micromuse.
Yeah.
So you can go back and see, these web pages that the students put up.
Okay, so like, do you have a website where you have all these links somewhere that for
Yeah,
people
I
who want to
do.
explore it? Okay, if
I
you could
do.
send me that later, I'll
Yeah.
send it out. Yeah.
Here is Sam Chan.
Oh, good. Yeah. Okay, so
Let's
thank you
pause
for
and
this
say hello.
time. Yeah. Hi, Sam. Yeah, we got on early because I wanted to hear Barry talk about his multi-user dungeons from the
Nice.
1990s. Yeah. So that'll be in the recording.
Sam
Wonderful.
Han is on an airplane to San Francisco right now. He's in the air, assuming that he took off, assuming that the plane took off when it was supposed to.
Mhm.
Before
Okay.
he boarded around an hour ago, and so before he boarded, um, he made me host. So
Nice.
so that
He hasn't done the host key yet, right? Yes.
he didn't give me the host key, and also I don't have his credentials, so I'm recording on my own computer,
Okay.
not in the cloud.
Hey, Josh. Yep.
This was
Hello, good
really
morning.
Are you still in San
George.
Diego?
I'm back in San Diego. Yeah, I had to leave and come back.
Yeah,
How you guys doing?
good.
Good,
Great.
thank you.
Hmm.
This elbow room thing is occupying my whole week, I guess, in some way, in a good way. I was understand the thought more about do we have a choice or we don't have a choice, and the elbow rooms really make a difference.
Oh, the elbow. Yeah, that's the book. For those of you who don't recognize the reference, Dan Dennett wrote a book about free will called Elbow Room, the
Mhm.
Yeah.
varieties of free will worth wanting. And evidently he is updated to a new edition of it. And Sam Chan found the new edition, has been reading
Yeah, I
this.
haven't had a chance to read it yet. But from my perspective, is when you say about you guys get on 1 hour early, he got a plane, he didn't transfer the host key. All those are elbow room symptoms from my perspective.
Yep. And
We do
yeah,
what we can, we do the best we can to compromise so that we can accomplish what we try to accomplish,
and
even
we
though we
call
don't have a
yeah.
choice.
What
Sorry.
I didn't realize is that even though I'm the host, I don't have his credentials for recording in the
That's what I
cloud.
say. So you gotta find a different way to make it work.
Yeah.
And that's between the master, I call that a master mode, meaning that I'm responsible for everything. I will make sure it works, regardless. I'm not in the position to do it or what have you.
And that's important for kids to learn.
Yeah,
Like, if you don't have things working the way it should be, well, what do you know about the system that you could work around it? So, like Barry figured out, oh, I could record to my computer.
that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yep.
So the way I remind people, if I can share with you, Barry, is that, I tell the kids that I cannot help you when you're in your victim mode. You're blaming everybody for everything that's going on. Yeah, I need you to be in a master mode so that you are in charge. Maybe you only have elbow room, but at least you have an elbow room rather than I'm stuck. The movie that helps me to understand this is someone put a gun in the head, and if you don't bring the money, I'll kill you. Say, okay, is it okay if I pull my own trigger? That would be one choice. Do I decide now or do I decide 5 seconds later? That's another choice that you have. I mean, at least you have choice in somewhere that you squeeze out of it. So I really love the elbow room metaphor. Like, Ming helps me a lot.
Yeah. The ability to innovate, especially in real time, there's this club called Toastmasters that, for a century was meeting face to face, and now they're having hybrid Zoom meetings at the community center. And I was the only guy who knew how to set up a hybrid meeting where you have room cameras and audio systems. You basically have a portable TV studio and a satchel so they can have
I asked for AI companion.
I just turned it on. And because we didn't want to spend $3,000 on it, I'm doing
I'm
it.
asking for AI summary. To me, that's
Uh,
important. It's like
can I
those elbow room, I'm trying to stretch just so I can have the maximum amount of room.
see? I have to figure out where to turn it on at down here. Where is
I'm
it?
telling you, I set up my account to be automatic startups. Like, I don't want to think about it.
Where is the thingy that you want me to turn on?
Do you have an
AI
AI
summary
companion
and AI.
icon in the middle somewhere, maybe?
What's it called? AI companion? Is that it?
AI companion, yeah.
Um, who can ask questions to AI companions? All part. Well, I don't seem to have any.
You need to enable it as a whole. So I'm not sure you can or what's his name?
Yeah.
I can't tell if it's enabled or not.
And we're going to have AI companions for dating too.
You guys are three of the smartest people I know, and then it's funny when it's like, what's the button? What are we doing here? What's going? It's so hilarious.
And that was brought up
The AI
last
companion
night.
is enabled. So you're
Yeah,
good.
like,
Barry, are we good now?
Is it enabled? Okay. I had to find.
yeah.
There's like 25 little things at the bottom, and they all have a short name, and I don't know which is which. Anyway, I think I got it turned on. Do I have everything turned on that you want now?
I think so. Yeah, I'm checking AI companion so far is enable summary because if it doesn't, you have to send a request. So I'm not getting the send request signal, which means to me is that I
Yeah, I
got
just tested Catch Me Up works.
Yep.
And
Yep.
and you could probably get a transcript summary and
Yeah, sorry
cool.
for the interruption.
Yeah, that's okay. So
can you button that says if anything good comes out of this conversation, post it on social media, and then later twist it around and make it a spin, and then tease out the chipmunks over in Madagascar or something? I don't know.
I'm sure people are working on that.
do something that I don't know. Let's push this AI. Let's see what it can do. Let's take this baby out on a test drive.
Okay, you're ready for the extinction of all humans now? Did you do that?
So anyhow, what I was saying before is that the Toastmasters, they wanted to have hybrid meetings, but they don't appreciate how much technology it takes to have a hybrid meeting where you have cameras that are covering the room and microphones that are picking people up and everybody can hear and be heard and covering the video. And you don't want to spend $5,000 for, the whole thing. So I was cobbling it up out of antique computers, old, 10-year-old laptops that, I didn't have to buy and old camcorders that I hooked up to the Zoom thingy. And yeah, so, but the thing is that I'm the only guy who can do that because, nobody else in the club has that kind of know-how, which means I have to be there every week.
I want to tinker with you one day, Barry. I want to just get a box of old electronics and we'll just tinker around, see what we can cobble together with some duct tape and
Seriously,
figure out what we
that's
can.
what I do. That's what I do.
Wow.
Refurbish, refurbish
Eric,
old gear.
Eric's showing off.
Yep.
I mean, I've got 30-year-old, 35-year-old computers in my basement that are just sitting there now. But
wait, I'm a bit of a dork.
If I can squeeze in a little bit on you're a good wordsmith. Your vocabulary is 10 times bigger than mine. So I'm going to zoom in on learning something from you. When you use the word appreciate in the sentence that you just made like 5 minutes ago about Toastmaster doesn't appreciate, what do you really mean by appreciate? To me, it's a blind spot. Like they are not capable of seeing the need of the technology. But for you, you use the word appreciate. For me, like, you're not even there. It's like, so I don't understand why you use the word appreciate in that sentence.
because having not actually done the work, they don't know what's involved. And it turns out to be a professional level of technical competence. And if you ask them to do it, they find out they haven't a clue how to do it. There's one guy in the club who made enough money he could buy really nice camcorders and everything. So he has an old camcorder. It's got a 100-to-1 optical zoom, and it's got a FireWire output, iSync output that you can plug into an old-fashioned Dell computer that has an iSync input. And I set up the camera, which is literally his camera on his tripod. And I said, can you be the camera operator for this room camera? And the answer is he's not competent to be a camera operator.
So if I may interrupt here, it's like, if there's a word I would like you to use, not stop using appreciate, what word would you substitute in that sentence that Toastmaster would not what?
Technical competence and know-how.
Stop being retarded.
Well, it's for people to develop their skills. Do these people,
Yeah.
Does anybody in that group want to develop some new skill?
Yeah.
We've had this conversation, Eric, probably about 30 times.
I understand, but it's a different twist I'm trying to get for it. The reason I'm asking is because this is a very important word for me. Because so some people's like, because you don't have technical competency to deal with what I'm dealing with right now. So some people will use the word stupid. You're being stupid. It's like you don't even think about it. So
it's a level of, it's like being a surgeon. You know, you have to study it and practice it, you know, for a decade before you're any good at it. Go ahead, Joshua.
The word I would use, just because we had this conversation many times, is bureaucratic. They're being bureaucratic. They're an old organization. They've been around for a long time. They've got their ways. They're set in their ways. They're following procedures. Switching and changing and being dynamic, which is what Barry is the opposite of Toastmasters.
Yeah.
Bureaucratic is a different perspective. I appreciate that. Thank you. Eric, what would you use in this sentence?
Okay.
Old-fashioned.
Well, I think
the writing letters
He was asking Eric.
paper and sending them through the mail.
Yep.
They're not using the telephone because the telephone is way beyond them. They have no idea what's a telephone.
So, yep. So you say you from my perspective, is I appreciate, they won't appreciate the email writing, telephones talking yet. So that's how I was interpret the word when you use appreciating. So I'm trying to substitute the words so that the known facts that yes, there's a technology, but they are not aware of it yet. So my job is to help you so that you appreciate it. I mean, you understand the technology of telephone calling and the email writing technology, so that I will introduce it. So I'm taking on my responsibility that I would need to, you know, if I do my job right as a technical advisor or whatever you want to call it, a resource person, I will now introduce you a better technology that will substitute whatever you currently have. So I will not use the word appreciate, because when you use appreciate, it's sort of like.
I mean, I'll give you an example. Up until late 1800s, a writer would write with a pencil and paper, and if it's going to be published as a book, some publisher had to typeset the copy, you know, with type. Mark Twain was one of the very first authors to use a typewriter. But if you take an author who writes longhand and you sit a typewriter in front of him, he has no clue. Okay. And there's still to this day people who hunt and peck, which is a terrible way to use a typewriter. It's faster to write by hand than to hunt and peck. So there you have it. So the notion that technology comes along, and if the technology is easy to use, people will begin to use it. So turning on the radio and dialing up a station is so simple, or picking up the telephone and, you know, dialing.
Okay, I got it. Okay, let me interrupt you again one more time. I got two person. One person here know the technology. The other person here doesn't know the technology. So I would not, the person that know the technology say, you won't appreciate the technology yet, therefore you're using your old ways of doing it. I would not use the word appreciate. I would use something else. I'm looking for what I would a better word to use.
Old-fashioned.
Okay.
You know, he's old-fashioned.
I was thinking in terms of motivation, like you want to help motivate that person to explore it. And the contrary thing about motivation is like not giving them positive feedback. There's some research on that if people work at something and they don't get rewarded, they will learn more, they'll like it, they'll actually, there's some very interesting research on that, but that's where I would go with it.
Josh has his hands up.
Josh.
Did it work? I'm trying to make the little hand my hand. Is it working?
Yeah,
they're on opposite sides of the screen.
I don't know. I tried. No, I'm being selfish. I only have a little bit of time, and I wanted to have a good conversation for the 20 minutes that I have, because my kid's gonna call me, and then I was just checking in. I was just checking. Okay, I was just checking in to see what's living for everybody on this beautiful Sunday that we're all gathered here. My dearly beloveds, on this Sunday morning. Praise Allah and Buddha and Jesus. Okay. Sorry. No, I'm just curious how you been, Eric and Sam and Barry. Like, how are you guys doing? What's living? What's going on? And I'm just asking what's there's so much going on in the technology world this week. It's crazy. So I'm just checking in to see.
Yeah. I try to stay away from too much news and like the cyber. Well, we don't know what cyber thing happened this week with the phones. There's theories that it's entirely driven by the sun, an X-class solar flare. So, I mean, we each have to filter out a lot of stuff. And like with work, I see huge projects ahead that I got to focus on now. Whereas for fun, like last night, I was on just watching a YouTube panel discussion with innovators in the educational technology space from the 60s and 70s. And Barry and I just spent about a half hour talking about his multi-user dungeon. So that'll be in the recording, so you could follow up later. Because I'm trying to capture as much knowledge of the past that's still relevant as we can and keep it, yeah, and then it can then be pulled out in segments and brought to the surface in various discussions. So that's where I am.
And I was talking to Barry and Sam last week about trying to build an AI that can use Barry's mathematics for calculus to do effective learning. So have a feedback loop. If we could create a loop where the camera is looking at the person's face, and then maybe even we can hook them to Neuralink or some sort of brain. I know there's $50 headsets that can do your brain waves. Take that feedback of if someone is in a learning state, feed it back in through the language model and have it spit out maybe 100 different possible ways of describing the same thing, dependent on the mathematics of what their state is.
So Josh, there was a lot of research like by Microsoft, like things like galvanic skin response for detecting emotional states. So that might be a useful area to research.
Sure. And then the retinal scan too that's being built into all the new latest television screens and the Apple Vision Pro to see the dilation of the eyes as well.
Yeah.
So
affective computing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now I wonder how well that Apple Vision Pro would support a learning environment. Like say you had many people, well, a small class. Could you use it and have a virtual reality multi-user dungeon, maybe?
Maybe. Yeah. I think the Oculus also can do a lot of that stuff too. So I was talking to friends about getting the old Oculus and building a like a laser tag type of warehouse, but instead of using laser tag, just do it all in virtual reality. So people just walk in, get the glasses, and then they can go into one section of the warehouse and play a game.
And then you could have an online gym class. Okay, we're going to do jumping jacks, everybody.
In one corner, they're playing Fruit Ninja. In another corner, they're doing a dating online virtual reality where they're all in some high rise in the middle of New York City and they're talking in a. I'm just saying the possibilities are endless of what you can do right now.
Well, basically,
So,
you open up one more channel, allow you to give feedback from that. It's huge.
yeah, have
Another
any of you guys
dimension.
used the app called Rec Room? Have you guys heard of this? It's mostly for kids, but you can play actual games where you go into the side of a place and shoot a bow and arrow together and try to hit a target. And then there's all sorts of games, but then you can change your avatar to different characters and you can have portals to all different parts of the world. So it's very popular with the kids. I used it with my friend's 11-year-old. Her and her dad, I set them up with the Oculus and I watched them on the TV screen, what games they played together. So it was very interesting.
So just a question, Josh. Do you think decentralized social networks will be needed for these types of apps to have the privacy and you can do all the communications peer to peer? Do you think that's something useful for what you're thinking about?
I did talk with a person 2 years ago that was working on standards for AR and VR.
Mm-hmm.
And the hard part is getting the standards of the portal links between worlds,
right?
Making it universal and ubiquitous for different platforms and different operating systems. I don't know where that company is at with those standards.
Right. Okay, so I'd just like to mention there's a new an environment called PEAR, P-E-A-R, and you can go to pears.com, P-E-A-R-S, and learn more about it.
Okay. Yeah. I do think it needs to be decentralized, and I do think that people need to be interoperable between those different worlds. And I know that there's standards being built, like you just said. Is Peer one of those? Is that?
Well, PEAR, it's really evolved from the DAT stack, the hypercore, hyperdrive, and but what they've done is they've made it easy to write peer-to-peer communication networking apps. So they're abstracting all that away from the developer. So in JavaScript or anything. So whatever standards evolve, this thing can eventually support you just build the JavaScript interface to it. So just keep it in mind.
Okay. Thank you.
As you're talking about privacy, I just thought about whatever platform you have, the hackers has a way to hack into it and get your privacy.
But if I'm fully encrypted between me and you, and no one knows the keys, I mean, unless they have a quantum computer, it would be much harder to hack peer-to-peer.
But if you're doing a platform that has 20 million people using, if you have a platform that have 20 people using, and
yeah,
that's a
but
public key.
let's start with like 2 or 3 people and then build it up. Yeah, so I think there are smaller communities where this makes sense, and there is research even in indigenous communities, like where they want to protect their secrets, but they're able to communicate peer-to-peer without internet. And so there's all kinds of models that can be built here.
That reminds me of before the TCP/IP was being popularized, the IPX on the on the Novell was perfect for it because of the token ring and old ways of doing it is fun. But the trouble is that you cannot make it big scale like TCP/IP. Once you have a big scale one, then
yeah. Well, the question is, when do you need scale?
yeah.
I mean, are you managing an international company like Khan Academy, or are you doing real applications that deliver value? Now, I'll just mention for vintage computers, there's something called FujiNet, called fujinet.online, which will allow you to do peer-to-peer applications with vintage computers. Like I have an Atari talking to an Apple IIc, and I was able to demonstrate with BASIC, you can write the communication layer. Yeah, so there's a lot of creativity now.
What protocol are you using to? Is that AppleTalk or?
It's TCP/IP.
Okay.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter if it's an Apple or Commodore or whatever.
Now you have to have TCP/IP to get through the network. Otherwise,
well,
you're not going anywhere.
People have written the stack.
Yeah.
You could do UDP, whatever you want. So the thing is, you're opening up that experience to anybody.
Remember
so like Barry's,
remember the talk command on Unix?
Yep.
The command was basically chat, 2-person chat, messenger.
Yeah. So like a good experiment would be to get an old computer onto Barry's multi-user dungeon using the FujiNet. I'm just dreaming here. Yep.
Yeah, I think going back to the older systems that are more interoperable is great. I think that's something that also it's like retro now at this point for younger kids. Like, what is this? I never heard of this. And
you'd be surprised how that retro community is developing, how it's growing. There are fairs across the United States. There was just one.
I love it.
Yeah, there was one in the Southeast California, Southern California recently. Yep.
Yeah. That reminds me of my 9-year-old grandson was pick up a cassette and show it to me. Grandpa, what the heck is that?
Yeah, it's like all the cars that in the 90s they started stacking all the plastic stuff on top of the engine on the Toyota cars and the Honda cars, and you can't get to the engines. And then someone pulls out a 1969 like Chevy, and they're like, "Oh, wait, you can just work on this. It's just easy. It's just you don't, I love it. I think the easier it is to interoperate, it's great."
I used to rebuild the carburetor on my 1966 Impala. But every 5 years I have to rebuild the carburetor.
Yeah, I think kids would lose their minds if they just saw that there's a little TCP/IP port, like a little Ethernet port that they could just Oh wait, you can plug one computer to another with a wire? That's awesome. They
Yeah.
probably
Serial
this,
cable, right?
well, this
yeah.
is over
That's,
wireless. You don't
I
even
used to
need a
use serial
wire.
cables and what Kermit, remember the Kermit program with serial cables?
Kermit. Yeah. Oh yeah.
I'm just saying that's so retro now for kids to just connect to the internet with a wire. They
Yeah.
That's novel to them.
Well,
Yeah.
see, a motivated person can go as deep as they want. Like you could find resources on the internet to learn everything about how an Apple II works.
Yeah, exactly. I think yeah, I that whole separation between the dark web and the light web or whatever they called it, that pissed me off when they started calling the regular internet the dark web. I feel like that was a branding just to get people not to learn and not to be curious about the internet. That to me was the biggest travesty of 2007 when they started doing that.
Hiding the circuit so you can't see what the transistors are doing.
Yeah, and then making an iPhone so it's like, oh, if it's not on the iPhone app store, it doesn't exist. It's like, what? No, come on. The guy in Santa Barbara that jailbroke the iPhone, the first guy that did that, he was a friend of mine, and we used to hang out. And he ended up getting into politics later on after he did that, because I think, you know, when you break a system, you start thinking, wait, what other systems around me can I break? Oh, let's go to the city council.
Yeah. Well, Yuval Harari, how do you say his name?
Noah
Yuval Harari.
Noah Yuval Harari is now hacking humans. Humans are hackable.
Well, he coined that phrase. He's not doing it. Like a lot.
No, but he points out, and in fact, that's what Trump is doing. He's hacking about a third of the electorate.
He's trying to. I don't know if his hacking works that well anymore. I think it was a very 2015 kind of situation.
He's still hacking his base.
Well, he hacked the media and all of the people in Washington that were really secretly Republican and Democrat friends. He exposed them for the little tiny dicks that they have and said, hey, listen, you think you're so tough and powerful. You're not.
You think you got a small dick? Let me show you mine.
Yeah, it was. I mean, you saw the whole thing of he exposed all those people. Like, you know, I go to your weddings, Hillary Clinton. I've been to your stuff. Like, come on, stop lying to the general public. And then he went on to lie to the general public after he said stop lying.
But Biden, all this stuff coming up now about his mental capacity, what do you think is going to happen? Is there an alternative to Biden now?
You could ask Barry and Sam. I'm not that interested in that, but
okay.
Yeah. Well, there's a non-zero probability that either Trump or Biden or both will become unavailable in November to continue running for office for one or another reason, age or incompetence or conviction or whatever. And, you know, the whole thing could be thrown into a cocked hat. Who the hell knows?
I've just been waiting for that to happen. I'm assuming that's going to happen. And if the fact that one of the two gets elected again, I'd be surprised. I'd be shocked.
Well, I could see that, you know, something unpredicted, but predicted, if you know what I mean. In other words, you can predict that something's going to happen, but you don't know what it's going to be. Wouldn't surprise me if either one or both of them is knocked out of the running for medical reasons or, you know, legal reasons, whatever.
That's why the backup plan is already in place.
This is why you have a vice president. You have a vice president to take over for when the president is unavailable.
Right. But they backed it up with a incompetent vice president on purpose for that purpose.
That's what Nixon did. Nixon put Spiro Agnew in.
So you think we'll have Kamala versus Nikki Haley? Maybe one or the other.
I think everyone, what I hear, the chatter is Gavin Newsom is being prepped. That's what I hear.
Oh, he's the governor of California?
He's Nancy Pelosi's nephew, and Nancy Pelosi was basically leading the Democratic Party for a long time. So
Gavin Newsom is Nancy Pelosi's nephew? I didn't know that.
Yep.
So isn't he also the governor of California?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
In other words, behind the scenes, they're trying to get that to happen. Kamala's trying to gain her power because she did. I remember when she gained power in California as the district attorney. So, in other words, the Democrats are fighting amongst themselves,
Well,
and the Republicans are scared of Trump, and they're just waiting for Trump to be out of the picture so they can put their people in. So,
Yeah, it could be
to me,
DeSantis. Who knows?
It, who knows? It could
Yeah.
be anything. I don't think it's so important as who that is. Is the real question is who's the cabinet?
I don't know.
I don't know. Like, who, in other words, if it is Gavin Newsom, who's his cronies? Who's he in bed with? Who's he going to appoint to all these positions?
Not Schwarzenegger. He's a Republican, right? The funny thing
No,
about Schwarzenegger was a Republican who was married to Maria Shriver, who was a Kennedy.
I think it's like watching the Kardashians. Like, to me, it's like that's why I'm not interested.
President Kanye West.
I mean, if you go to the parties, like I was at an event where Adam Schiff was speaking, and Adam Schiff is one of those people that's been trying to gain power. He's the one that did the whole Russiagate thing.
Right.
He's the leader of the Russiagate thing, and he's a complete douchebag. I see him trying to take over the unions because Cusella works in the union world. I don't want to say too much because this is recording, but yada yada yada. If you want to know what's going on in politics, follow the unions because they're the swing votes. So if they get one union to back one person, that's 60 to 70, even 150,000 votes, and that can swing an election.
You know, the unions shut down Frank Sinatra in Australia. There's a famous story where, you know, he used to, in the middle of his regular singing act, he would stop and just, you know, shoot the breeze with the audience. And he would occasionally say a few raw comments extemporaneously. When he was in Australia, he said a few raw comments that pissed off one of the unions, and all the unions basically shut him down. They all refused to work on his tour, including even refueling his jet. And he got trapped in Australia for a week with no shows just simply because he made some offhand remark that pissed off a union in Australia.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's a true story, a little known story, but it's a true story.
Well, this is what I call a common sense that AI does not have.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, there are people saying AI should pick the president.
I thought AI was going to be the president. I'm just waiting another 2 election cycles.
Well, it wouldn't be surprised me if, maybe not in our lifetime, but soon, that an AI could assume a lot of governmental function. Maybe not the highest level, but a lot of bureaucratic stuff can be done by AI.
I mean, that's what the United States is, right? The bureaucrat is run by the bureaucrat, the president runs the president. So,
you know,
Yeah, but
functionaries.
whose interests does the AI have at heart? Does it have at heart all the people, or is it trying to deceive the people, thinking they have a government when it's really trying to take over?
Well, there's a better chance that an AI will be ethical than a human.
yeah. Definitely more efficient for sure.
Yeah.
And it's more in black and white because this is what, determine how it runs it. I mean, whatever you want to call that, the structure of AI is predetermined by people.
So, like, is it a problem of scaling? Like, maybe early on in America, small towns, it worked, whatever system we had.
It doesn't scale up.
It doesn't scale, yeah.
That's why you had to go from democracy to republic.
Yep.
Well, on a side note, I've been a friend of mine that doesn't live in America explained to me how American politics work and the request for comment area when you're writing a bill in Congress. They have to send it to a town hall for a request for comment period, which is anywhere between 30 and 90 days. and the average American doesn't know that they have the opportunity to weigh in on bills before they're passed. And I looked up a database that is still the same format from the 1800s. And it's everything that is going on. It's just like our recording of this conversation. They record every single meeting in the government and publish it every day on the secretary. It's like on the archive. So if I could get a large language model to translate that into regular tweets and texts on Facebook, I think that would change all of the United States. And I would love to work on that at some point. I just don't want to be shut down by the government agency. In other words, I have no rush to do that, but if I had the time and the energy and the group of people, and that's why I was talking to you, Sam, about using Heartbeat to get a bunch of people together, spend a year organizing people that are interested in doing a project like that so you could move really quickly before it could get shut down.
Turn the congressional record into the congressional opera.
Let people take the small print and turn it into big print.
Exactly.
Well,
and that's
the way I think about it is that as long as you're not affecting whatever the interest of some party, the guardian angel will not come and get you.
Well, I mean, it's hidden in obscurity in plain sight, just like
well, that's what you think. The always think of the reason they stay the way has some people that's interest protected. Trust me, when you touch it, you will notice, you will appreciate the guardian angel that's standing there all this time that's invisible.
Well, related to that, think about how the judicial system works. They look for precedents, cases from 50, 100 years ago that establish, okay, this makes sense for that time. Maybe it still makes sense now. And this is how we're going to rule because of that precedent. So they always have to justify their rulings, and they write it all. Yeah.
The way the precedent works is almost like a belief system. Because I have so much knowledge, so I create a belief that take care of things so much more efficiently. So I can use the same belief to build on my belief. This is how stacking of things works. And it's a huge mess.
Well, it is sense making. Yeah, because the modern judge has to know the past and know the present and decide, okay, this case before me, yeah, how should I rule and how should I justify it? So there is something to that. If you can have good sense making and ways of knowing what doesn't apply anymore. Yeah. So
I think of it as like a domino. One stack on each other, and when one fall, the other ones all fall.
Yeah. Yeah, we did a lot of this stuff during the Occupy movement, and it was working back then. Now it's a little bit more difficult. But if you set a server up, it's basically what Julian Assange was doing with his, what was it called, his website? The
WikiLeaks.
WikiLeaks. Yeah, something like a WikiLeaks for the modern day.
So I'm curious what's changed since Occupy that it wouldn't be effective.
So the anonymous movement split during Occupy. There was two factions that split off.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the way they were disseminating information through the social media at the time in 2012. We were basically, the word doxing, we were like the king of doxing. Okay. So anytime a person in the government was doing something that they didn't want, basically there was no repercussion because people didn't know who they were and where they lived. We doxed the person and let everybody know they just passed this bill that does this. Here's their phone number. Here's where they live. Here's where they go to the coffee in the morning. And so there was all these people meeting them in the elevators, yelling at them. And they shut that down, basically. They made a rule on all social media that doxing is not allowed.
Okay.
That's what happened in Occupy.
But if you think about that, like in the 1700s, that's how things worked. Like
right.
People would have access to their politicians and say, hey, why'd you do that? And then there'd be pressure for them to do their job. Yeah. So
they insulated themselves, and they did something which was unprecedented, is there's a constitutional right of freedom to assemble. They took away that right because the minute you assemble with more than, I think it was 20 people, without a permit, you get arrested. That was the law that they changed. So we tested that law to see if we could still do it. And we got 60 people in the city hall in Santa Barbara, California. And the cops rolled up with 40 cop cars to arrest all 60 people. And the cop asked us, do you want to vacate the premises? And we said, no, we have the right to assemble. And they said, okay, great. And then we got a little message from the person around the corner saying, there's 40 cop cars waiting for you. You guys should probably leave. So we told them, we give us 20 minutes, we'll pack up all of Occupy and leave. And we never came back. And that was the end of Occupy.
Sit-ins. Remember sit-ins?
It was a sit-in. That's exactly what it was. We sat in, we had 70 and 80-year-old people sitting with 20-year-old college students overnight in tents, all talking about politics and life. And it was a powerful movement, but it was easy to shut down because they would use, tear gas and stuff like that on us. So
I had a friend who did a one-person sit-in. She was pregnant with her first child, and they had just taken possession of the new house in Newton, but they didn't have an occupancy permit. And there was a delay in getting the occupancy. So she went down to the city hall in downtown Newton and sat there. And she says, I'm going to sit here until I either get my permit or the baby comes.
Yeah. And legally, you have the right to do that. It's just they also have the right to throw you in jail.
Yeah. Well, they gave her
no Yeah. In other words, if you're willing to fight it in court, if you want to spend 2 years, you will win. But no one wants to spend those 2 years because, all of your stuff is taken away. It's one of those things where the right to, you guys remember when we were younger, the way protests were done before. Now protests are co-opted by 4 different inside movement, like the thing on the Capitol. You guys know that storming the Capitol, there's a famous video of a guy saying, let's storm the Capitol. And all the people in the crowd are saying, you're a federal agent, you're a CIA plant. And it turns out the guy was a CIA plant. He got caught. But he was standing there saying, storm the Capitol, storm. And they're like, no, CIA Fed, CIA Fed. And you can watch the video. They're all yelling at this guy. And it's just really hard to do those movements now. Like, we had CIA operatives in our movement and we sniffed them out right away. But the one in Oakland, the 4 guys from the CIA, we knew they were a plant because of their boots. The way their boots were, they were military style boots, and they were grabbing rocks and throwing them through windows. And we were all peaceful. And that's in every protest that I've heard of going back to, the 1700s. There's always those plants. So it's hard to, it's just hard. It's especially in today's society, they have everyone's cell phone and they know who's moving where and when faster than you can organize.
Comedy, satire, parody. What was it? Yep. I'm going to write a song and I'm going to use your first and your last name in the lyrics.
Mm-hmm. And Cory Doctorow's books help me learn about what's going on. Like he talks about those issues with doxing, which I never knew about. And one of his latest ones is Lost Cause. If you ever, that's about the immigration issues and also about global warming. So he's dealing with different ways of thinking and how they clash. So
Cory Ross, you say Ross Cory.
Cory Doctorow.
Cory. That's his first name. His last name is as like doctor plus an OW at the end of it.
Yeah. Thank you for indulging me. I'm gonna be listening. I'm gonna keep my headphones on, but I have to take the kids down. I got my nieces here and my little one, and I gotta take them to breakfast at the hotel.
Enjoy it.
I'll be listening. Hopefully I can get them to breakfast and get them back into the hotel room. So
bon appetit.
Okay, I'll be here just listening.
Yeah, great seeing you, Josh.
Thank you. Good to see you too.
Barry, could you type the Corey thing for me?
Yeah, I'll put it in chat.
Thank you. I'm not very good at spelling and names and all that stuff, so I could use all the help I can get.
Yeah, and I put a website where he blogs, craphound.com.
See,
Oh boy.
I can do something that Sam doesn't do. I can change Josh's name to his name,
There you go. You're doxing Josh.
doxing him. Yeah, Cory Doctorow is his father was also a pretty famous author, as I recall. Forget his father's name, but yeah, he wrote for Boing Boing magazine. I don't know if he still does. And actually, I Boing Boing magazine actually did an article about micromuse. It's one of the publications that wrote an article about it back
Well,
in.
that's great. Good to know.
That's how I learned about Boing Boing.
Yep. So I don't think we're going to solve the world's problems today here.
But talk about law. I think a real lost cause is Western civilization is going to be the most famous lost cause of our era. Was it Gandhi was asked about what he thought about Western civilization? He says, I think it would be a good idea.
What does that mean? Well, the way it evolved is Western civilization meddled into all the other countries, saying, "Hey, try some McDonald's or whatever." So it's the same operas playing out all over the world repeatedly. We never learn.
The opera.
Yeah. So Sam, how's that compassionate AI working out? People,
It's working beautifully. I mean, it's a lot of people are using it. I mean, they have huge impact. They have, thousands and probably in the neighborhood of 100,000 people are using it, So from my perspective, it's a platform that where they have a lot of resources, a lot of volunteer around the world. To me, they are the largest volunteer networks with a lot of geeks and the high technology people and high power people, including people in the world class level that
yeah.
come together. Huge.
And I see like you have choice. You want to
Yeah.
ask a spiritual person, you want to ask a technology person.
Yeah.
It's nice.
Anything I can do to help to see along. The way I operate is that, I call it the best use of my time and resources is that I scan for whatever structure they have, and if I see a weakness that I can help within my elbow room, I'll jump
Nice.
in and help them. Otherwise, I leave them alone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like I'm wondering for myself, like I have to learn these Microsoft technologies and I get very frustrated as I get angry at Microsoft as I'm learning. So could I say, hey, compassionate AI, what can I do? I'm so frustrated, help me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
get
mean,
me out of this state of mind so I can then, okay, I'll
yeah, this
try.
is this is what I tell you, that when you do something really, you're having a hard time doing something. I'm just giving you one example for this week.
Mm-hmm.
My archive folder on my email is exceeding the highest amount of memory that allow me. I think it's 99 gigabyte or whatever that
Okay.
Microsoft allow. So I need to go in and clean my archive folder in my Outlook. Guess what? I spent at least the last 10 hours yesterday and day before trying to find a way to clean it up. So I manually clean one chunk at a time or by one sender or what have you. And last night at about 9:30, I have a breakthrough. Guess what I'm going to do? So again, the ways is I always say, if I find the right way to do something, then things become so much easy. So what I found was like, okay, I asked AI, I asked I asked Gemini, I say, okay, no, actually no, I asked ChatGPT because it's a Microsoft version instead of that. So I say, okay, ChatGPT 4.0, how do I delete? Okay, the keyword is how do I delete 3 months or older email that is not read yet, or unread email. So
Okay.
it's like, so I said, well, this is the step that you do. It's like, okay, bingo, I got it. Because any email that I have not read over 3 months, that's not important at all. It's like I want to delete those things. So it's like that should be able to get rid of, I would say, easily a third of my email or maybe even half. So that would I find a way to find the technology ways. I call that a perspective that make things so much easier. Oh, okay. So I know how to delete 3 months old unread email. And there's steps that I can do it. So it's like until I find that, I'm good looking for the way instead of trying to do it. So one of the Stephen Covey's book is called 7 Habits of Effective People.
Yep.
There are several examples in that. I'm sure one of them you can recognize is that people are chopping out trees, and the manager went up the ladders and say, "Stop! You're chopping the wrong direction. Like you're making highway. Shut up! We're making progress."
Nice.
So
Yeah.
that's one example. The other example was, as I leave my house, I see my neighbor sawing the tree, and I come home at 5:30, and my neighbor's still at it. So as I come to the neighbor and say, "Have you ever considered stop and sharpening your saw?"
Yep. I remember that one. Yep.
That's funny.
Those are a few of my favorite examples out there.
Yep. Like recently, I was looking for a document from 2007 and I couldn't find it. Well, I have like an index of my hard drives, and what do I do? Okay, yeah, well, it turns out it's probably on a hard drive that crashed in 2008.
Yeah, tell me about it. So you just inspired me to tell you a story I have. Last weekend, I was watching a video introducing about NVIDIA Chat RTX. Have you heard of it yet?
No.
Okay, you can download the whole NVIDIA AI program into your own hard drive and run it. You create your own large language model right on your own hard drive using your own stuff.
Okay. That would be
One
interesting.
cache. One cache. Guess what the cache was?
You need an NVIDIA processor, GPU.
You got it.
Yeah, so you
You
get a
need a
graphics card.
$10,000 GPU.
Yes, you got it. That's
Yeah,
how they sell
right.
them. Right. So I look in my catalog, about $290 with the cheapest version. The highest version is like $1,300. The one give me the second, I would say this almost the second best of the best is about $600. Okay, I look in my own catalog. Okay, there's in stock they're being sold at being sold in Amazon for like $700. I have it about $600. Okay, I grab one and ship it. I'll have it tomorrow. So that will allow me to run my whole machine with my own LLM model in my own hard drive.
You can do it with a $600 GPU?
Yep, 600 GPU to do it.
Well, let's come down from 10,000 then.
Oh, they have a $10,000 version because I don't need it. I don't need that such speed because I probably have 3 or 4 backup machines. I can stick that GPU in it that will let it run all night long. And they also have a whisper mode, like you can run it at 60 watt or something that the fan will be so quiet it will not make noise. But if you crank it up to like 90 watt or something, the fan will go loud crazy. Like, okay. I do have very high speed and high quality, reliable, HP, Z workstation. So I'm all good.
Oh, let us know how that works.
Yeah. So it's again, talk about indexing. It's like one of the things that you cannot rely on Microsoft Outlook because my file is so big. Looking for an email and it's like finding a haystack. It's like I oftentimes have to sort it by dates. I cannot. I have to index it myself with my eyeball.
Yeah, I find the search doesn't work for me. I'm trying to find an important email from a few weeks ago and I can't find it right now. Yeah.
But I did pay for the $360 a year Copilot for professional.
Okay.
It's supposed to do the job for you better, but I have not
Well, how
tested
does
it
it
out
get
yet.
trained? Yeah. So what is Copilot? Is it pre-trained?
Well,
Or
basically what it does is that it's different from there are so many Copilots that are driving me crazy. So
yeah, everything.
you pay $30 a month, but you have to pay all 12 months at the same time. They used
Okay.
to have that you need to have at least 300 users before you allow the sell to you. They take that away like a month ago.
Okay.
3 months ago, you cannot even buy Copilot because you have to pay 300 users, $300 a month, and for the whole year in order to get that. So that they dropped that because nobody is buying or something. So they have the individual user, $30 a month, but then you have to pay all 12 months for $306. I say, fine, I'll pay for $306.
Okay.
So what it does allow you to do is that you now have all your material. And I try to ask like, what material are you looking at? It's like they wouldn't tell me.
So you're training it yourself on your
I don't
document.
train it. I just install it. It will go in and you grab all my material. Suppose I can do this. I can go to say, look at my record in my what I have. How many times I talked to Joe Smith and what do I talk about? It will answer
Okay.
my question.
All right. So it's really like using your machine as a data lake, like finding documents and emails that
It's
it's
what I call you have the ChatGPT material out there plus, but you will focus on my material first.
okay. So it's got to be ingesting it
Yeah,
as on demand and
yeah,
then doing the computations, what's
yeah.
most relevant to what you're asking.
Yeah, but I want to say, well, I want you to look at this. For example, I have about 7 or 8,000 works of book that I scan in with index and all that stuff, without OCR and all that stuff. I would love to be able to read all this folder here for me, and then over the last 40 years, I have a lot of material that I stack
Sure.
together. I would love to be able to do all that.
Yeah, and I'd like to take photos of old
Yeah,
notebooks and yeah, just have it
yeah, yeah,
available so I could link to it in the future and
yeah,
organize by
yeah, yeah, yeah,
topic.
yeah. Yeah, it will be
Yeah.
it
What
will
I'm
be
frustrated.
visual, movie,
Yeah.
text. But for me, right now, it's focused on text right now.
Yeah, what I'm frustrated these days are the large file sizes. Like I download videos from YouTube and each one is a gig, 2 gig.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I got to keep offloading it to a 5 terabyte hard drive. And what do I do? Yeah, so I have like a script that'll give me a directory of all the titles so I could search by title for something that I downloaded. But yeah, then making the time to watch something of interest. Like I want to focus in on a specific topic of interest, which I know is like educational technology videos. It's in a folder on this 5 terabyte hard drive. And yeah, so I'm
Yeah. So
sure that
again,
this is the same problem Sam has with all the videos he's recording over the years. How do
right,
you
right.
focus in and get the topics? Yeah. So it's got to get transcripts and whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, I'm not sure about. That's why I was excited about the chat RTX. Is that would I be able to say, okay, index everything on my hard drives or multiple hard drives? I mean, I can buy it and 20 terabyte hard drive. I don't care. It's like whatever it is. On my hard drive, can I point to external, like for example, Sam's 300 videos that I want to index all that for me?
Yeah. Yeah, and like you could download them as audio, which is a lot smaller, and
Right.
then but then you need like audio to text, which is available. I mean, that'd be nice if Microsoft gives you that on your home computer, like to just
Again,
convert your audio to text,
I've been so busy that so like I don't have time to play with it. That's why I encourage Barry to here play with it, and tell me
right?
what you think.
But think about that. You download Sam's library of videos as audio and then have it churn through that to create transcripts and then search the transcripts for topics.
I don't want to download. All I want to do is say point it to this is the channel or what all
Yeah.
the libraries that grab everything it is you can, and
Yeah. I mean, I
what
like
I found
staying
was that
offline.
this is what I can share with you.
Yeah.
ChatGDP has some custom GDP now. And
Okay.
one of the GPP is called the YouTube summarizer.
Oh, cool.
If you use a GDP summarizer, you will be able to read. You will be able to grab some. It will be able to give you a summary of what I was. That's what I was using on some of the Barry's YouTube. That
Okay.
for whatever reason, ChatGPT can summarize some YouTube video, but not the others. And this summarizer will do everything regardless.
Okay. So it's speech to text
I'm not
conversion.
sure. This is sort of weird. Let me see if I can
Yeah. So it
find.
seems like Otter AI is the most advanced, maybe in this space of, yeah, transcription. Yeah. I don't know.
So anyway, if you go to ChatGPT and you can go to the explore GDP GPT as
Hmm.
GPTs, and that will allow you to find you if you type in YouTube, it will give you the summarizer. And if you use the summarizer, it works a lot better. It works on almost all the video I tested myself.
Hmm.
I haven't run into a video I couldn't do a summary on it yet, but
Yep.
everything else, no.
So how did YouTube become the best platform for video sharing? Think about that.
Because Google bought it.
Yeah, investment.
I mean,
Um,
it was its own thing until Google bought it. Google bought it really early on.
yes, it became the
They
GooTube.
pay $1 billion for it. 1 billion. I
$1 billion.
remember the number.
Not,
1
that's not
billion.
very much money in these days.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they applied their search technology to YouTube and built this platform that gives everybody in the world the best access, but you have to follow their rules.
Yeah.
Now
But
they're
because they have
cracking
to have a
down.
lot of, because the society imposed a lot of rules on them, and only them, they have the energy, they have the resources and the talent and the money to be able to fight back, or fight. Just like Uber. If you have a small company, you can never be an Uber.
Right. And if they don't like somebody, what someone's posting, they have ways like, okay, did they make this available to children? No, they
Yeah.
didn't. So we're gonna get them
It's
on that.
complex.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
complex.
Uh-huh.
So with a lot of money, you have a lot of elbow room.
Yeah, a
That's the
lot
way
of
the system
leverage.
was
You have
set
a lot
up.
of leverage.
Yep.
Yeah, a lot of
Uh,
leverage. Yeah.
and that's capitalism, that people who get the money
It's
by,
Archimedeanism. If you have a lot of leverage, you can
yep.
move the whole planet.
Well, if you invent Windows in 1989, you can rule the world.
Well, that's not only a factor. There, you have to have a daddy that has a lawyer,
Oh, yeah,
law office.
that's part of
And
it. Yep.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Is there a better way?
Yeah, it
Hopefully,
is.
And what would that, who's good? How does that change? How does change happen over time?
Yeah.
operas.
Yes.
Oh, by the way, before I forget, you can ChatGPT 4.0 now allow you to create your own GDP now that people can use. And it's pretty
Okay.
much, they ask you for about 5 or 6 questions, and it
Mm-hmm.
help you to create your own GDP from scratch.
So if it finds everything I've put on the internet, I could say, okay, this is the Eric, ask Eric, or ask
Yeah,
Barry.
play with it, and it's $20 a month. I mean,
Oh, okay.
4.0. All you do is it will allow you to create your own GDP that then,
Mm-hmm.
if I can search it by your name, you can send me a link that your own custom GDP is, I can use it. I mean, think of it this way, it's like GDP is it, and now they have put a filter, or they have a structure, the thinking, or the filter, or whatever you call that, they can just
Mm-hmm.
use it. Sort of like, let me borrow your body, and let me put in my designer jeans on you and see how it looks, or something along that line.
Well, that'd be interesting, like for Barry to find all his aliases across all his websites and
Yeah.
index them into an AI.
Most of my stuff is on a half a dozen websites.
Right.
I
But
mean,
the key is that you need to take the content and somehow translate it so that people can, put in their, what I call their platform, using their own structure, and then create their own filter or emulated as you, the mini version of you,
Mini me.
the mini Barry in their own platform, that when people ask a question, they can answer
Mhm.
that from the mini Barry
And
instead of the whole material.
then you treat it like a baby. You see how well it behaves. If it's
Yeah.
giving you too much poop, you get rid of
Yeah.
that.
And also, if a user they use mini baby berry and they like it or whatever, they can make comment, and you can receive the comment of the users as well. So it's pretty neat. I would say it's worth playing with it.
the hardest stuff to find is the stuff that's on Facebook.
Yep.
And before Facebook, there were all the other precursors of Facebook, which are defunct, and all that material is basically lost.
But
And
the
that's the
reason
Internet
Facebook is
Archive.
that they are designed the whole Facebook for revenue generating.
Right.
Yeah.
If you fit their model of generating, then you do very well.
I
Yeah,
mean,
you know,
I can still find my stuff on my own timeline. That's not too hard. But anything that's in comments on other people's timeline, it's really, really hard to find.
But think of the database size that they have to manage. Tell me how you index that darn thing. I was like,
yeah.
if you pay me $1 billion, I don't think I can do it.
Well, they're using people to do their work. Like people are voluntarily linking and they're using your data to index what they need.
By the way, Sam Hunt is again in time. He has another 24-hour timeout on Facebook. He has no clue what his infraction was. Won't he says he hasn't even posted anything yet. He got an infraction, so he has no idea, what his crime was this time.
Yep. I first got on Facebook because my high school was having a class reunion and we were trying to locate people, and they said, oh, Facebook has a lot of people to find. And that's why I joined Facebook initially.
I have found relatives on Facebook. I mean, distant relatives that I knew that I had people who belong in my family tree that I have no clue, and I found parts of my family tree that were long disconnected on Facebook. Partly because I have an uncommon surname.
Right. I use Facebook because I counted the last time I counted about 5 years ago, I have about 25 communities that I work with, and over the years, that's not including my childhood, grade school level friends. Anyway, so Facebook has allowed me to find them and to be able to group them together and still be able to contact them and like some of the posting and be able to allow me to travel some memory lanes back then and all that fun. Otherwise,
and when it no longer works for a community, well, you may have someone try to create an open source copy of their community on something else, like ELGG was the sample social network back in the day, open source, but you don't get all the features, which, so it's a challenge between centralizing, decentralizing, and
I consider the biggest problem is the size, and you need to have the resources. You need about 2,000 PhD database designer to help you to get that structure whole in place. I mean, it's like calling, like, you're good in holding 5 apples, but when there's 5,000 apples holding, you have only hands to hold it, forget it. You need a truck.
By the way, if you ever figure out how to get ChatGPT to create a database of all of my stuff, I have a name for it. It's going to be called Codex Cortianus.
You and your language.
Because the reason it's going to be called Codex Cortianus is because language is a tool for encrypting information.
Yes. They are.
Each word is impactful.
Yep.
Yeah, you have to, basically, you read my stuff, you have to decode it.
Yeah.
So on your gravestone, can we have a QR code where you just scan that?
A QR code to Codex Cortianus.
Yeah.
Then you have to use ChatGPT to translate it into street language.
So did the lady ever come back to you after her lecture she finished her lecture? And Mary, is that right?
I'm not.
You and I were having some conversation.
What is it?
Your friend, your lady friends that was teaching the class or something, and then she's supposed to get back to you about something that you were going to ask her. Let's see if I can find a thread. There's so many things that's happening. I keep forgetting.
A lady friend who's teaching a course.
And Mary, is that Anne Mary? Let's see here. Let me find it.
A lady friend who's teaching a course. Oh, Anne-Marie.
Anne-Marie, yeah.
What about Anne-Marie?
That we were supposed to do some questioning.
Oh, yeah, right. Because, the deal is that she has read lots of classical literature.
Right.
The idea is that everything that's in my mathematical model, there should be exemplars in classical literature where the character undergoes exactly that kind of emotions and learning cycle. So if you do an example of emotions and learning cycle, there should be like Odysseus or some character in classical literature, Beowulf, who knows that, Jason and the Argonauts. And the idea was find a well-known example of classical literature, Shakespeare, whatever, that illustrates, some aspect of emotions and learning.
Yep. Yeah, we call that in Chinese term is like we want to have some association with the king of the century right now, so that we get some benefit from it. So because they are famous now, we become famous because of them. So if we can use a good, famous, popular item or stories that we can use our way of analyzing it to them, now the way that we analyze something, hopefully may get benefit from it.
Yeah, almost every story, almost every situation, you can find a classical story. That's the classical model of that. Whether it's
as I was talking to you the other day, Barry, if I didn't have a chance to tell you verbally yet, but I'm going to tell you right now since Josh and Eric's listening. I'm thinking about that. Can we imagine like you put maybe like I don't know, a structure like a 4-quadrant or 6-quadrant or something along that line, that you take a story, somebody would say, well, I want to talk about Shakespeare's story. So I want to make that one of the most famous Shakespeare story that I want to make, quadrant number 3 harder. So I increase it and the whole story changes.
Okay.
You take quadrant number 2 and make it easier. The whole story make it smaller, make it easier. So you can think of it like this: is your way of learning structure will be like a control panel, like a joystick. If I can turn any of the joystick around, and then the whole story just changes things. Like,
well, that would be interesting. Something like Romeo and Juliet, where everybody dies.
Well, that was the one that I just had in mind. I was going to say it before you said it. They're laboring under a misconception. Each one has an incorrect theory of the state of well-being of the other, and they act on their incorrect belief, and they all die.
So what possible communication could have been done to prevent everyone from dying, or one person from dying?
So a clue that I'm not dead, a clue that I'm still alive, and therefore don't assume I'm dead. And I had an elderly couple neighbor, right? Just a couple doors down. He was in hospice at 94, and we knew that he was at the end of his time. And she was going to visit him. I would give her a ride because his hospice was right down the street, and I'd give her a ride down and back once a week or so. She was 92. I figured, he was going to die, probably within a month or two, and then she would be a widow. They died within 36 hours of each other, and she died first.
Oh, my.
Wow.
When I heard that they died within 36 hours, I figured he died and then she gave up the ghost. No, she died, 36 hours before he did. And she was 92. And I would pick her up and drive her down to visit her husband. They would have wonderful conversations because he was still lucid, even though he was immobile. And it never occurred to me that she was going to give up the ghost first. But they died within 36 hours of each other.
Wow, that's a beautiful story.
Yeah. And the guy that I work with at the fix-it shop, I drove him to the fix-it shop with me on a Tuesday. The next day, he said to his wife, I'm not feeling well. She took him to the hospital. He came home that night. And the next morning, Thursday morning, they woke up together in bed, and he said to his wife, thank you for taking care of me. And he died. His heart stopped. Last words were, thank you for taking care of me.
Wow.
So I had a co-worker, colleague die, and then my neighbors, died. All within.
In my vintage computing groups, there are people who die young. Like I just learned about someone in the color computer group. He made a whole bunch of videos. I see him. He's very young, and he's gone. Yeah.
Wow.
Michael Eisenberg, when Hal Abelson was sending his grad students over to BBN, Mitch Resnick and Mike Eisenberg were the two grad students who came over. Mike ended up going to University of Colorado, Denver, I think, or Boulder. And somewhere along the line, I heard that he died, but no information of what happened to him, except that, he passed. That's all they ever said. And, you always sort of hypothesize the worst. It wasn't a natural death, but
Mhm.
I was surprised.
Well, what I know typically is that when they don't have a reason to take another breath, then it's like, I'm done here.
You never really, I mean, they don't disclose, often don't disclose the cause of death, in which case you sort of assume that it wasn't natural.
Do you know anybody who's had near-death experiences?
Um, I suppose I've had near-death experiences, not quite as dramatic as a lot of people. A lot of people, they see the famous white light,
Mm-hmm.
and where they actually were right on the edge of expiration.
Yeah,
My
they're
near-death experience is more like somebody wants to off me and tried.
Why you ask, Eric, if I'm curious.
yeah. Well, there are YouTube channels of people telling their stories, and there's similarities, but I mean, people look to that for some spiritual connection. Because hey, if this person went to heaven, saw Jesus, wow, there's something to get from that, whatever it is. Yeah,
Some people say the white light is a recollection of the birth canal. Coming out of the birth canal is the
it
white
could
light.
be. Yeah, I
It's
mean,
one
there's
theory.
there could be neurological theories, but yeah, I mean, people need spiritual things to hold on to get through life, I think. Mm, whatever it could be, I think everybody needs something to grasp.
Yeah, I have many people told me about their near-death experience. I know someone that have went through about 3 dramatic, huge dramatic
Mhm.
near-death experience. They actually pronounced dead and then come back and all that stuff. But from my perspective, I have the earliest one I have was I call that near-death because I know that if I didn't think of it this way, I will be gone already. So I'll tell you the story real quick. Is that my home is very close to a river. So in the monsoon time, the river will overflow, right? And I'm as a young, I would say at the time it may be 7 or 8 years old, maybe 9, something like that. I was sent to the near the riverside to buy the little oyster shell, the green one to feed the duck. That's what my job's supposed to do. I was waiting for the boat to come around, and then the river bank, of course, is full all the way to the edge. And there's a boat that near there was jumping onto the boat and come down the boat that's playing, in the river. And I was not supposed to learn how to swim because that's what my grandmother tell me not to learn and all that stuff. So I was supposed to be something to do with the water thing and the superstitious stuff. But anyway, so I don't know how to swim. So as I was jumping back and forth, I slip and I fall straight down to the water. It was pretty deep. I would say in the neighborhood of probably about 10, 15, 12 feet deep water. And I don't know how to swim, and the water is brushing. And there's nobody around except only me. So 3 things happen. So I know that I need to hit I will hit the bottom of the river. I only have one chance to come back. If I put my hand together, I'll have the least amount of resistance so that at that time I was 9 years old, but I know all this concept. I don't know how I came in, I knew it. So I put my hand together, I sit up straight, so I drop down like as long as I can. As I get down, I push my toe, what do you call it, my tippy toe, whatever you call that, I push it down so I can get the maximum amount of rebound. And the next thing I know is that I need to, because it's wet and it's muddy and it's all clay-like mud, I have to put my finger there. I only have one chance to suck it in and really hold it good and to get myself out. And that's how I get out. Some people don't consider
Wow,
that near-death experience. I call it near-death experience because I know if I make one mistake in any of the steps I was talking about, I'm gone already.
that's
So
fascinating. Well, thank God you're here. Yeah.
and yeah, this is my first. I qualified myself as near-death experience because,
Mhm.
yeah, it was. I don't know how I got the knowledge. I don't know why I had thought about. I was very clear. I was very calm. I was not panicking. I deal with it.
Yeah, focus. I mean, people could do extraordinary things when they're totally focused like that.
Yeah. And I was be able to tell you, I also know that my body will float, but that is not enough for me to get out there and there's nobody around to save me and hope throw a rope or something. Like, I don't know swim. It's like only one chance, and I better make use of this chance and to the best of my knowledge. And I don't know how I got my knowledge. I know that I haven't learned of buoyancy. Haven't learned all that stuff, but I knew all that stuff
Well, maybe you
in
had
my
some
head.
angels helping you out. Who
I don't
knows?
know.
Yeah, we don't know the truth, the ultimate truth. So we have
Yeah,
to, that's why we come up with theories, myths, and everything.
yeah. People ask me like, how do you know this? Even though I'm so old, much older than you, I don't know. Like, I have no idea. It
Instinct.
showed
Yeah.
up. So
Right.
I consider near death because if I make one tiny little
Right.
mistake,
Mhm. Yeah, I've been watching some videos about the space program and how many things they have to consider for when
yeah,
going into space to make sure you have enough of a window to avoid catastrophe.
the
Still,
telescope. But
they're
how
still
many was
learning how
that?
to stick the landing on these moon landers.
Yeah,
they
yeah,
haven't
that's
quite
a
learned to stick the landing yet.
oops, fell over, right?
I, this one
And then,
fell over not as bad as the Japanese one, but it still tipped over.
uh-huh.
And the hardest thing in acrobatics is sticking the landing. In the
Yep.
Olympics, you can have a beautiful flight, but you don't stick the landing, you lose points.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The thing that amazed me the most in this entire life of I have was the one that the James telescope. How many
Yes,
they were thinking about how many odds they can fail again?
yeah,
356 or
10,000,
something.
yeah,
I was
right.
like, what? And you take on this challenge, like, how dare you? But
Yeah,
the
and to
whole
make
point,
that work, there's got to be hundreds of thousands of pages of documentation of what to do in every case, what can go wrong here. You have people thinking about this in meetings. I mean, just the whole human effort to say, okay, this is the probability it'll fail here, but we're going to keep going in that case. Yeah.
yeah, the things that amazes me was back in 84, 85. Someone told me this. It's like, the person that do the welding for the space shuttle,
Yes.
he has to has a PhD on welding before
Wow.
they would allow him to do the welding on
Interesting.
and so like so this is what I use the word appreciate, Barry. This is what I appreciate the
Yeah,
the
it's
superior technology achievement of someone that have a PhD. Can you imagine a PhD candidate
yep.
is in order to touch the
Okay, the video I was watching was of the shuttle Discovery after the Columbia exploded. So, how they got back in space and all the changes they had to make to inspect everything and to go to the space station, take cameras, and inspect everything, look for loose tiles and anything that could possibly cause a problem coming home. So, it's fascinating to see how our thinking evolved and all those new procedures were created. And then they had a successful mission and came home. But they got close to having a big problem, but they figured out just from the images they took that, and they actually practiced techniques of how to repair a bad tile. That they actually tried some new experimental glue at the time to see, okay, is this a good glue for fixing a tile?
And don't glue your glove
Yeah,
together while you're doing it.
exactly. Yes. Don't glue
this
your
is
fingers together. Yeah.
this remind me of my own story about in my high school. I was very fortunate to get into what we call the cream of the crops high school in my country. We have in our states we have one high school that by the time you finish your high school you have equivalent of the city college degree. Okay, so you have to be super good to get there. I was lucky to get in there. Within a week, I found out that all my classmates have a 4.0 GPA, and I was having like more like a 2.8 or
Oh
maybe
no.
2.2. It's like, holy shit, I'm gonna flunk this one here because in Malaysia, if you flunk this Malay language class, you the whole thing you just destroy the whole thing, like the whole ship gets sink. So I said, holy shit, and I cannot go back to my hometown now anymore. Like, what do I do? So for the Malay language and for me I need to focus on, I know that I need to catch up with such a huge gap. I I decided that I need to study between 6 to 8 hours a day on Malay language alone for the
Wow.
next year and a half so I can catch up with my classmates so that I can barely pass, I can beat them at that time from the, let's say, my grade, to even give you the idea, I was having 2.1 GPA then versus their 4.0 GPA in the Malay language. That's how big the gap was. And that was the most critical class that if you fail everything. So this is what I did, a year and a half and all that. And after that, we have a trial exam. So the trial exam to tell you whether you're going to pass or not. So I went to my teacher with my trial exam answers to my test. Could you tell me if you think I can pass my Malay language class? He was a blind person. He had to read the class like this in his eye. It took him like 15 minutes to read all the things I did on my class exam, the trial exam. He's like,
Dicey. It's
I was
dicey.
like, I was like, holy shit, I tell you. So anyway, make long story short, so the day that the examination result was announced, everybody got the exam from the secretary of the principal. Everybody got this and they're happy and all. I was like the last one. Like, so the person, the secretary said, if you don't take the paper from me, I'm gonna close the door. I said, what are you doing? I slide it. I see it. I got like a 3.0. Like I passed the class. That took me a year and a half or 6 to 8 hours a day on that one subject out of the 15 subject I got to study. I have 15 subjects in my class for 2 years. So when I need a PhD to do the welding, I truly appreciate it. But I know what they're going through.
Yep.
You know what the word appreciate means?
That's what I use the word appreciate. I don't use appreciate very lightly.
I work with a lot of Indian people, and I imagine what they've gone through trying to learn English. And I mean, they were trained in India in prestigious engineering schools, and they come to America or they get jobs in America, and they've got to translate in their brain the English, and So some of the emails they send I have to decode what are they really saying. But I mean, that's language we're learning from each other.
Yeah. And I also learned that in order for me to shift my thinking style is you have to figure out whether you dream in Chinese or you dream in English. Well, as soon as you dream in English, you got it, man.
So how good is AI with Chinese? Like
Oh,
say
it's
I
super
wanted to,
good.
it
It's super
is,
good.
yeah,
Yeah.
they can get the
Except one time I was doing this, it was throwing in some Russian words in it because I was doing some very complicated Chinese. They call it classical Chinese. It's almost like what they call a Shakespearean language. Classical English. We have a classical Chinese, and AI for some reason couldn't handle it. It has the Russian words in it.
nice. It was programmed by Russians.
I don't know. Basically, the word, maybe because of the word is best explained with the Russian word because the Russian word, and it's just it's such a so sort of like you want to describe the type of snow. The best word to use is Eskimos snow language.
Nice.
Because they give you the difference and make the difference is what I call it.
Yeah, and on the International Space Station, they have Russian language, English language they have to learn. Yeah.
Yeah, because language is, until you have the difference and make the difference. So I buy a computer. It's like, what do you mean by a computer? It's a laptop, it's a desktop, it's a workstation. It's like we know the difference and make the difference, but for the people with the general public, they don't have such a resolution of the computer, right?
Right.
So it's the same thing in everywhere. It's like illness. I have a headache. Do you mean have a high grade migraine and is it left or right or left? Like until you know the difference and make the difference, allow you to solve the problem, you don't have it right yet.
Yeah, so communication with someone who doesn't have that level of granularity in language, that's the challenge. How do you teach them? Okay, this is packed snow, this is flurry, whatever, all the different types of
Fluffy
snow.
nose.
Yeah.
Corn snow.
Yep.
It's like even right raining, you got thunderstorm, thunder shower, heavy rain, light rain, sprinkle.
Spritzing.
Yeah,
Please
it's
do.
all experience. So your childhood experiences shape your brain and how you interpret the world. And yeah, and we're ignoring much of the stimuli that comes through our senses because the brain is just painting a picture that we can understand.
No,
Yep.
It's integrating it all for us.
Yeah.
Ah,
So can you imagine that a person that live in the mountain and the person that live near the ocean in the water will try to communicate? It doesn't work very well.
well, that's collaborology for Sam. How do you let them collaborate? Okay, the world is full of water now. What do we do?
Yeah.
You know, I could swim. I could build a raft. I could.
But if you want the best wood to build a boat, you need to use the wood from the mountain. You don't use the wood near the ocean.
Okay.
So it's like, okay, how could I help you so that you can get it? It's like the best person to build the boat is the one that on the use the boat, not the person that build the boat because you have no idea if the boat sink.
Okay, so the one on the mountain builds it, and the one near the water teaches them how to row it.
Yeah.
That's collaborology right there, Sam.
Yeah, it's called feedback. How do you provide feedback to the person so they need the feedback to build a better boat for you, right? So if I can use Barry's example of remember the joystick, multiple joystick can intensify and loosen it up and ease off and all that stuff. So can you imagine if you want to flip it around? There are some successful entrepreneurs that are doing very well. They are very strong in certain way, can handle the learning curve in certain, what I call um, certain segment or certain whatever you want to call that. Let's say we call that 6 different A, B, C, D, E, right? So you can C is his strength. So it's like, okay, so if you choose the right career, then you can handle this kind of problem. You see what I'm going at? So that if I can measure the way you solve your problem, I can extract like what you're strong at, and I give you the similar thing, then you will be able to do this easily. Meaning that for example, if you live near the river, you know how to swim very well, or if you're near the ocean, you can swim very well. I'm gonna enroll you in the swimming class so they can beat everybody else in the swimming or something along that line. So in the entrepreneurship perspective, it's all about learning curve, what you can handle, what you have patience for, and what you have talent for.
Yeah.
If you map it correctly, then you should be able to do well in whatever you're choosing to do.
the
But
key
if you
thing
just
is
look at
that
my diploma, yeah, go ahead.
if the learning curve is fun, you'll traverse it. If it's not fun, you don't.
Right. The question is, how could you make use of that, leveraging how do I help you to decide, or how do I identify that which learning curve will be fun for you?
Yeah, that's tricky because there are learning curves that were fun for me, but they're not fun for the other guy.
Yep.
And so I can work with somebody who enjoys the same things I enjoy, but somebody who's got a different appetite for enjoyment, I'm often at a loss. I have no idea how to engage them.
But the question is, when you're at a loss, how could I change it so that it become fun for you? So what's the difference that make the difference that allow me to tweak a little bit so that it become a fun for you? It's just like a joke. You remember the joke is that if I do twist the sentence, it become a joke for you, right? Then it was a miserable story until the last line came in, and it's like everybody laughed.
So let me give you an example. So I started with Apple computers because my brother needed a computer for college, and he could have gone with IBM, but they liked the Apple, and it had a CPM card so he could do his work. So that's what we had, and that's what I grew up with. And I spent my teenage years writing programs for it. And then I found I really enjoyed the music programs, and I was interested in computers and music. And then in college, I studied that on my own. But practically, I had to take business classes to get a good job. Okay.
Do
So I did that and I got that diploma.
you have the book Music from Mathematics by Max Matthews?
Music from, I'm going to write that
There's two
down.
guys at Bell Labs in the 1950s who who were among the pioneers of computer music.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them is Max Matthews. I forget his colleague's name, but they wrote a book called Music from Mathematics. And maybe a second, maybe there's two or three books that
Mm-hmm.
are about music and mathematics, but that's
Yeah.
one.
Well, one interest of mine is music visualization, and John Whitney did a lot of that. He actually made videos trying to, yeah, take tones and chords and visualize them with patterns of dots.
Right.
Yeah. So, see, this has been like a hobby. And because I grew up on Apple, I know all about how Apple does things. But now I'm getting into a Commodore 64 and Atari, and they're similar but different.
Yeah.
And I got to adjust my mind to their hardware quirks and how they work, because I want to learn enough that I can make them talk to each other and write a game or something, and yeah, learn what I want. So like I want to make them do like collaborative music, which I now can with this networking technology. I could have the Apple telling the Atari, play this chord. I could have another Apple telling the Commodore, play this chord, and see where I can go with that. Yeah, so that's an interest, but practically I don't have the time to fully develop that. And people are making videos. Okay, we want to learn 6809 assembly. Watch these 10 videos. You'll learn it. So I could do that if I make the time for it. I could develop my clarinet playing with the videos that I'm taking in Germany. So yeah, I could collect all these learning objects, learning paths, but practically I got to get the information for my taxes. I got to get the stuff for work. You know, the life intervenes. I got to do the dishes and get food for next week. You know, yeah, it's
Taxes.
about juggling act. Yeah, that's life.
All right. Life's a bitch, then you die.
Well, if you were to, I can imagine that if you, let's say, for example, if you move to Philippines where the standard of living is very low, you don't have to work to keep up all the things that you need to, the obligation with paying the bills.
Mm-hmm.
Then you will have the freedom of time. And then all you need is have a couple of computers and big screen and you'll be good to go.
But I want all my old computers too. That's
You can bring them with you if you want. For me, it's about when you're learning, there are three things about. One is how much time you have, what other obligation you need to fulfill before you have the privilege of playing with your learning thing. And the third thing is that have you is that thing that you're learning, is that what I call easy enough for you so that you can handle it? Is the learning curve low enough instead of the learning curve is too high? For example, my biggest learning curve in my entire college life was assembly language.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And there's so many different types of assembly languages. You learn one, you have no clue how the other one works, which is much more sophisticated and could do a lot more than the other one. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you see, when there was an event last week that I participated in, that became a motivator for me like 2 months before. Okay, start preparing for this event. What computers are you going to bring? How are you going to hook them up? And what hardware, what do you want to show on the screen? So that motivated me. Yeah.
See, when you have motivation, you can go through some boring thing that people consider as difficult or boring, but for you is because I call it the compelling reason, because you have a compelling reason that pull you into doing it.
Yes,
So
I set up a table, I put the few computers I wanted, and then I figured out how to connect them. And that was exciting for me. That gave me an outlet to the daily stuff at work. Yeah.
yeah. This is what I mean by what can I, so let's say we map all the things that we just talked about, right? It's like, okay, so what would be one thing you can do to give you the maximum return of your time and your resources? So let's say the biggest ROIs task, or biggest ROI job, or biggest ROI career, whatever that may be.
Yeah.
So what do I need to tweak here in the learning platform
Yeah.
here, so that you can, whatever you do, so that you can get closer to the biggest ROI.
Yeah,
And
I understand that internally. Like I could learn this pair environment now and practice that in Linux. And by doing that, I'll see if it makes it easier to do decentralized web programming. And then if I could do that, I can think about taking Ted Nelson's concepts of tumblers and deep linking. Can that be put on the decentralized web using this newer pair technology? And then a year later, some new thing will come about and I'll have to upgrade it.
Yeah, and also you don't. You
yeah.
said, see, the success is that you don't have to do everything yourself. It's sort of
Right.
I don't have to delete every single email on my archive folder. The software will do it for me because if I find a way that allow me to trigger that event that will self-learning, whatever you call it, or having a partner that do it for you. So again, this is how my brain works as an entrepreneur.
Right. But see, I have to evolve with the environment because, like, back in 2016, I looked at that DAT stack and I really liked it. And I made a series of videos showing my ideas of how that could potentially bring Ted Nelson's ideas back. And that evolved into other things. I mean, this was just a hobby, but I made a presentation. I did a whole Ted Nelson exhibit at one of the vintage computers. So there's videos so people can learn about me by watching all my YouTube videos. If there's enough they could dig into to get where I was and see some code and but that's as far as I was able to take it until the world changes and you got to jump to the next technology because that's old stuff is deprecated now. And Barry's familiar with 40 years of deprecation. Yeah.
So
I
the
still have a
question is,
pencil and paper, but I can't read my own handwriting.
that's a tough one.
Yeah, no one can read that floppy disk anymore.
That's the floppy disk.
Or the tape.
No, I do have some floppy drive. I still have some floppy controller.
Yeah.
I still keep them.
Yeah, well, people are finding tapes now that yeah, they want to read the tapes, and one person may have a PDP-8 that can read the tape.
Yeah.
Yep.
I still have some TX drive, TAC,
Yeah,
yeah, TX drive, cassette tape.
yeah. So the
Yeah.
thing is, where is information permanent? That 5 terabyte hard drive for now, is that going to be permanent or is it going to crash and I'm going to have to get the newest petabyte in the future, whatever.
Kind of stuff I run into. I have a gigabyte motherboard that a friend gave me.
Yeah.
He retired it. And I didn't realize it until recently that the BIOS was legacy BIOS. It didn't have UEFI support. And you can't, and the most up-to-date BIOS that you can get is still legacy BIOS. Okay, no problem. I can install Linux on it. I can install Windows on it. But if you install Windows on it, it has to be an MBR drive. Turns out if you have a GPT drive and you want to put Windows 10 on it, you can't do it if it's a legacy BIOS.
Yeah.
It wants a UEFI BIOS to talk to a GPT drive. It can read a GPT drive, but it can't install on it or boot on it. And so when my MBR drive was dying and I put a new drive in and it was a GPT drive and I copied the partition over to the new drive, but it was a GPT drive and it wouldn't boot. Took me a week to figure out that a legacy BIOS cannot boot Windows on a GPT drive.
Yeah, so you're dealing with the hardware side of it, and then there's the question of the emulation of that old hardware. Can that be brought forward in emulation or what?
And I said, well, can you find a bootloader that can be launched from a legacy BIOS, but can nonetheless talk to a GPT drive? And the only one that seems to exist is something called Clover. And Clover is so arcane that nobody seems to know actually how to make it work.
Yeah, so, where's that knowledge preserved?
Right.
That's the thing.
So basically, I had to go back and put another MBR drive on it.
Yep, and our search engines are just going to show the most popular links to that knowledge. Maybe it's buried in someone's blog that you can't find. Yeah.
Living in a world between legacy BIOS and UEFI BIOS, it's a pain in the tuchus.
You just remind me of back in 84, 85, 86. I bought a couple of those E-square prompt eraser.
Prom erasers, yeah.
prom eraser,
EEPROM,
right?
EEPROMs,
You
yeah.
know, EEPROM eraser with the ultraviolet lights.
Yep.
You know why? Because the BIOS got changing and you got whatever program was not so, you got to pull it out and erase it and then reprogram it. So I have an EEPROM programmer, I have an EEPROM eraser.
Yeah,
Back in the
so
days.
yeah, I mean, my career was in developing software, so I started saving one of every operating system, like Windows 3, Windows XP, Windows 95. So at least I had a machine. If I found some old code, I could run it on that machine. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I've been trying to update the BIOS on a Dell machine. And normally you would just, you download the BIOS updater and you download the new BIOS and you flash it. Well, it turns out that the reason the guy gave me this machine is that the power supply was getting flaky. And you can boot it up, but you got to push the button on the power supply to override the fact that the power supply doesn't work unless you push the button. Except that when you flash the BIOS, it power cycles the machine in the middle of it. And so when the power cycles it, you lose the power supply and it loses the BIOS, and you can't update the BIOS until you put in another power supply, one that doesn't turn off. Here's Joshua again, and he's
Yeah, I
back to
hear.
being Zoom user again.
Yeah, cool.
Changed his name back.
I didn't do it. That wasn't me, Barry. You guys good? I was just
I
checking in
changed your
before.
name, but you changed it. Oh, that's right. You dropped off.
Yeah, I dropped off.
Right, you dropped off. That's why.
So how are the kids?
Crazy. Hotels are nutty. There's like 30 kids running around the hotel lobby, and it's just insane. How are you guys doing?
We're talking shop.
Okay, nice. I'm just checking in. Thank you for letting me pop in and out. I appreciate it.
Is your beard getting longer? Or is it just the sunlight?
It's getting longer. It's like it does this weird, it grows down. Like some people's grow up,
Yeah,
mine grows down.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just weird. I
It's
can't,
heavy.
I gotta
Use
shave
the
it.
gravitational pull.
This is my scarf when it's cold. I just use this as a scarf up in the mountains. So I want to cut it, but then I don't.
Yeah.
That'd be an interesting experiment. If you lived on the moon, how would your beard grow?
Everywhere.
Oh, did you
Cover
see
your mouth.
see the deal about keeping track of how much fuel is in the tank of the rocket when you don't have gravity? They had to come up with a really innovative way of measuring the amount of fuel in a tank when you're in space.
How do they do it?
One of the ways that they do it is kind of interesting. You know that if you have water in a bottle, you blow it, you get a tone for the size of the cavity. Well, they use this technique because it doesn't matter where the water is, the amount of airspace is the same anyway. So they tell by the tone of the resonant cavity how full it is. It doesn't matter if it's scattered or not. And that's one of the techniques for measuring how much fuel you have in a fuel tank in zero gravity.
Love it. Thanks for sharing that. Again, it's all about different perspective when one perspective doesn't work.
The guy had to have a PhD in resonant cavities to figure out how to measure the amount of fuel
But
in
basically, there was a problem that was presented, and minds thought about it, and someone came up with this idea.
There are two or three methods, but one of them is just to briefly accelerate so that you get artificial gravity, or maybe rotate, and so you can generate artificial gravity, but that uses fuel, and you don't want to use fuel to measure your fuel.
Those are criteria, limitations.
Especially if your fuel is scarce.
Yep.
It is, of course.
Yeah, and then the moon lander, they came pretty close to running out of fuel.
Well, that was the whole idea, is they wanted to use 90% power, so they would have a little bit of a sprint left at the last minute if they needed it, which turns out they did need it, but they didn't use it effectively. But yeah, sticking the landing is going to be the next big breakthrough in moon Olympics.
Yep. So moon landing simulators were very popular at a certain time, like maybe the 80s. And I wonder how kids today would understand a moon landing simulator.
It would be interesting if the moon landing simulators did have this issue of horizontal motion not being zero, and therefore tripping over your own feet when you land.
Yeah, so maybe it could start as a game and then lead them to think about the physics and what could happen. How, if they then learn this is what we did in 1969, and think about what it would take. You're detaching from your mothership and going down, and
then you hire an Olympic acrobat to explain to you the technique for sticking the landing.
cool.
Have any of you guys played with Universal Sandbox, the app for you can make a size of an asteroid and slam it into the Earth, or put two planets together? It's got all the physics built into the app.
No, haven't done.
It's pretty fun. I'll have to put it on the screen one day. We'll just see what happens if we take out Dubai or something. We'll smash it into
what would be cool ocean. Is that simulate all the space junk. There's a database of all the space junk out there.
I think that might be built into the app. I could be crazy, but I talked to Jim Green from NASA, and he was saying that the reason the space junk problem is it's a political problem because a lot of it, you're supposed to clean up your own junk. So China is involved with theirs. Oh, okay. And it's a very political problem with the space junk.
It's going to get worse before it gets.
Yeah, and in the International Space Station, they have to keep monitoring the orbits to make sure it doesn't collide with any space junk. Yeah, it's a big problem.
Yeah, that's why I was always...
a garbage truck for the space junk yet.
Aren't they planning to build that in a few years, the space station? I think I thought saw that they have a plan. It's not that far from its end of life, I think.
You saw the new one. I think I showed you, Barry, the new inflatable space station they're trying to put up.
One. I guess once the inflatable one is up, they're probably going to arrange to deorbit the old one.
It does. Since 1998, it's been up there.
Yeah, a long time.
Yep. Yeah, the new space station is going to be really interesting. It's all modular.
Yeah, and I guess once they have a space station orbit, then they'll figure out how to make one on the moon too. Inflatable one on the moon.
I don't know. Oh, good.
When we get to Mars, we're going to need inflatable habitats.
Exactly.
Yeah, because we have to be underground initially because of the radiation. So you need to set up life support.
By the way, I sort of understand why they wanted to land at the South Pole, because if there is water ice at the South Pole of the moon and you have solar energy, you can use solar energy to break up water into hydrogen and oxygen, and now you've got fuel. Yeah. This is how you turn solar energy into fuel to fly off the moon. You have to break the water down into hydrogen and oxygen.
I've got a very ambitious friend, this guy, Chris, who's trying to build transportation systems through the ocean, like a brand new layer. And he's studying history so he doesn't screw up the politics of any country. So he spent 10 years studying history. He's doing the engineering in parallel, but he got the engineering down. But now he's realizing if I do create this transportation system, it's going to change the politics.
Yeah.
So he's trying to figure it out.
Yeah. What will be the new slave trade?
It'll be his system, his tunnels through the ocean.
Because, I mean, in a sense, slave trade is you have cheap labor in, these Oceania countries, and then you're trading the product of the slaves. You don't import the slaves, you simply have them do the work there.
Yeah, I mean, are you guys following the robotics world, the company Figure? Are you following that, Sam?
A little bit, yeah, not much.
I'm trying to keep an eye. Yeah, it's going fast. They said there's going to be a huge announcement in March of AI and robotics of this year.
A big organization. They have robot is going to be exploded. It's, I would say the next 3 years, I should have one in my house.
I'm assuming that the Tesla robot will be on the market in 2 years, and then for the general public in 5.
Is that
I was tempted to spend the $36,000 to buy the kit and assemble it myself. but I don't have the time, and my limitation is my time. I can send it to Barry and have Barry do the assembly.
Well, yeah. I mean, if it there is assembly jobs that are within my wheelhouse, and there are assembly jobs that are beyond my
Oh,
ken.
they give you the whole thing, all the it's almost like IKEA.
Oh, if it's like IKEA, I can do it. Yeah.
That's what they say.
All
You
you
get
need is a
nothing
Phillips
but
screwdriver and a pair of pliers. I can do it.
Sam
Have you
Han
seen?
that's trying to connect it. He can't. I don't.
yeah.
He
Problem
he
is,
can't get in here. What's going on?
How do you? Oh, are you
well,
reading over on
On
Collaborology? Has he
Facebook.
landed?
Well, he's trying to connect. Yes, on
Oh,
Facebook.
trying to join in flight with network blocks. Yeah, I asked him about that yesterday. He thought that there wasn't going to be enough bandwidth, or it was going to be too noisy in the airplane.
Okay.
But I guess he's doing text to the messenger thingy. 12:52 p.m. Is it that late already? Oh yeah, it's
Yep.
6 minutes to the top of the hour. Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to get going soon.
You have 6 minutes.
Mhm.
what's your last word?
We'll relay. Yeah, this is a relay through Barry.
You have 6 minutes, Sam.
Sam, before I go, is there anything you want to work on in the next coming months? Because I think there's going to be a huge tech explosion at the end of March.
There's so many things on my table, and my biggest one right now is to clean up my. How do I get my email junk down to minimum? That's my
Bite the
thing.
bullet and throw it away.
Which email system do you use?
Outlook, I use Office 365. I have the biggest, largest allocation of storage, 99 gigabyte in archive folder and inbox folder. So I got 99 plus
Does
99.
does Copilot have tools for that yet?
That's what I'm trying to find out. I couldn't figure anything out. So anyway,
All right.
I figured out a shortcut to clean up my email real quick, which is the one that removing all the email that I have not read 3 months ago or something like that. Yeah, older than 3 months old email, that unread email that I want to delete. So I just figured out how to do that, and so I'm going to do that as soon as I get off here. Then that is
I'm
no
about to
problem.
use email for the first time in 14 years, so maybe I can help you with that.
Yeah, I mean, basically, the biggest problem I have is that we generate in our own internal system. I generate on average about 300 email on reporting that some order has some trouble, whatever. So I got them, but they're repetitive. So ideally, I have a way to, when the new one, let's say report ABC comes in, the old one I want to get auto delete. That will, if I can figure that one out, that will help me the biggest way. The
Okay.
second one is that a lot of junk email. I don't have time to go in and unsubscribe because there are like 200 of them, right? So I want to be able to say, I want to grab it to a folder and have AI figure out how to unsubscribe and unsubscribe for me.
I'll look into that. There's got to be people building those systems for
Yeah, I'm
unsubscribe.
willing to pay for it. To me, it's at least worth $1,000 worth of my time, easy a month. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I stopped trying to clean my email because I was a web developer. So my email was the backup for every website I've built since 1995. So I just gave up on email. And when I got Basecamp, Jason Fry, the guy that did 37 Signals, he invented a system called Hey. So it's a Dropbox email. So I started building Dropbox emails for each project. And then that was backed up to my email. And so I just went, you know what? I'm done with email. And I just stopped using email. I just used Basecamp
Yeah, I use
and
Team a lot
Dropbox.
and Trillion, Team, Trillion, Skype. Those are the three biggest one I've used. I mean, occasionally I use WhatsApp and WeChat, but those are
Yeah.
the main communication I use. But email is I can't avoid it because all my orders and transaction and vendors are all communicating email, so it's, I can't run away from it.
Can you bring
Remember,
it all into a dashboard?
Yeah,
remember
basically,
all the Outlook PST files?
Yeah, I've done that.
Uh-huh.
So what I do is that I export my folder that I know I'm going to preserve into a PST file and keep it over there without password or whatever. And that's as a backup so that when Microsoft delete, my contact name get disappear. I know in iOS, the contact get disappear because it's like, if you don't call your friends in 5 years, you don't need that name. Done.
Yeah, the only problem I've had is when someone asked me to send an email I sent them 10 years ago, I couldn't find it. Sorry.
My Gmail from 10 years ago is still working. The archive files.
Yeah, the thing
How
is the
about,
search is very difficult and it doesn't work the way I need it.
yep.
Oh, I hear you.
Can you
Yeah.
imagine you got to index every mailbox for every Gmail user? Come on. How much resources, how much CPU, how much memory they need?
I don't know. I thought Microsoft was trying to put the Copilot in there to do all that stuff,
I did. I have it. I pay for it. Yeah, they make you
but
pay.
it doesn't work yet, right?
Well, it works whatever they say it's going to work, but it doesn't work the way I need it to work. That's the best way I can explain to you.
They're putting
Mm.
Copilot in everything, and I guess they want the users to evolve it as it goes.
It's
Yeah, they
different.
want us to
Copilot
do
and
the work.
everything allow them to go to the web and ask questions. The one I'm looking for, the difference that make the difference is the Copilot you pay for $30 a month is that it will use up your own data. You use up on your own
Yep.
data.
Yeah, so what kind of
Yeah.
support do you get from Microsoft? Hey, Copilot didn't do this or didn't do that right. How do you know?
Good luck, my friend.
Yeah,
Ask
right?
questions.
Yep.
It's the perfect business model because they could say any reason why it doesn't work the way you expect it to.
The Microsoft tech support, if you're asking questions about Outlook and Excel and Word, it's pretty good because you can go straight to them in India and all that stuff. But when you have a sales question, for example, I was trying to buy the Visual Studio for the developer versus, so that's like, I spent 3 months trying to get an answer, but it's not going anywhere with it.
Yeah,
Hey, guess who's joining?
Yeah.
Sam?
yep. Yeah, his plane docked about 5 minutes ago at the gate. There he
Hey.
is. Are you? You're already inside the.
The SSO
The
in the plane.
oh,
Yeah, hey, what's up?
well, so it's really now. What's up? Well, what's down? Your plane is down.
I'm headed to I think I'll stop off at the Alaska Lounge.
So you're in the terminal.
Yeah, I'm at gate D3.
Yeah, but you're inside the terminal. You're off the airplane.
Yes.
So what's going on in San Francisco? What are you doing there?
I come here every other week to work in Sunnyvale.
Oh,
So this is my week in Sunnyvale. Last week was my week in Washington. And so I alternate. So what's been the topic of discussion today?
Well, you can go ask. Is it AI companion that tells you that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
companion. Yeah,
yeah.
still a
Go
good
go
summary.
go to catch me up on AI companion.
Well, I'm walking right now, so I'll just do that when I get
Need
there.
verbal communication.
Oh,
yeah.
actually, I could, if I click it, I can read it to you. See what happens. If I click it, catch me up. All right. Here it comes. Oh boy, it's tiny print. Can I make this bigger?
You bring it to your next screen, Barry, that have a lower resolution. They give you
I
bigger
could read
text.
it.
Can
It says the meeting so far has covered various topics such as technology, social media, historical references, AI, and personal updates among the participants. Discussions ranged from the use of educational technology to the impact of social media regulations like doxing. Participants also touched on global warming, privacy concerns, and the evolution of communication technologies. Overall, the conversation was diverse, touching on past experiences, current events, and potential future developments in technology and society.
Thank
That's
you.
what I got. Yep.
your version is
Cool.
different than mine.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
always
different from
different
mine either.
for different people. It's
Yeah.
the probabilities are different.
Yeah. Meeting so far has covered various topics ranging from personal anecdotes to discussions about politics, technology, and relationships. Participants shared stories, mentioned individuals like Gavin Newsom and Arnold Schwarzenegger, and talked about AI, summarizers, and historical figures. There were also mentions of email management, hacking, and personal experiences.
All right, really good.
Overall, the meeting was a mix of casual conversations and more serious discussions on a wide range of subjects.
It's different from mine, both of you.
Very different, yeah. I realize that I'm on a Mac. I can just use the mouse to scroll the zooming.
And we're consuming space on Barry's hard drive as we speak.
Oh yeah, because I do not have your credentials for the cloud, so I had to record on my own hard drive, which means that it has to be uploaded some intermediate place for you to get it.
I'll get to it soon, Barry.
The
Yes,
thing is I hope it's not so big that I can't upload it to my Google Drive because I've only got about 5 gigs on it.
Yeah, so when you upload it, could you just post a link in Facebook so we could get a preview, an advanced copy of it before it goes to YouTube?
Yeah, assuming that I have enough space to upload it to Google Drive.
Yeah, just let us know where to find it. I think, yeah, we should stop it soon.
All right. It's time for me to go.
Yeah, great seeing everybody.
Thank you.
All the best.
Have a safe trip. See you.
See you later, Sam. Bye, Barry. Thank you so much. Cheers.
Have a good time in San Diego.
Okay, I will. We got everybody's here. We're yep, she's got roly polies. So
Holy polies.
see you later. Cheers.
All right, so it's just you and me now, Sam.
Okay, Barry. So anything we want to catch up with, or
It's up to you.
wait till next week?
Since you're in this terminal, if you wanted to discuss anything.
There's nothing urgent. I'm in the Alaska Lounge, so if I talk much, I'll probably bother people.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna go grab a bite to eat and then get some other stuff done before going into the office tomorrow.
Yeah. So Eric, because Eric saw your note in Messenger, he connected shortly after I started the meeting. So this is going to be closer, not quite 3 hours, well, close to 3 hours, I guess, because I started recording shortly after Eric came on. He wanted to talk about historical stuff like the early MUDs and the early developments of educational technology going back to the 1980s. So we talked about that before anybody else came on.
Did anybody mention turtles or logo?
Yes. Well, that was the whole point because there was a conference call involving Cynthia Solomon and a couple of other people who were early adopters.
I saw the first minute of that video.
Yeah, and they mentioned the fact that physical turtles of Lego logo, when you had real turtles on the ground back in the 1980s. There was a brief mention.
No, I'm talking about logo, the language with turtles on the screen.
Before the turtles on the screen, they actually had physical robot turtles literally on the floor. They actually had real turtles on the floor, and at the Science Museum, we actually had the early apples with the early logo, with the early mechanical turtles on the ground before they had simulated turtles on the screen. So
did Eric mention peaks and pokes on Apple IIe's?
I don't recall that.
Yeah, those are how you stuck things into memory.
Oh no. We did talk about coding with Cooter, CDR, car and Cooter. That was the couple of early assembly language commands. Something complement the address register or decrement register. I forget what the C stood for. We talked about early coding in coding with Cooter and other
Content address.
content
address.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I forget what it stood for. But there were a couple of famous assembly language commands, car and Cooter. So,
Along with move.
yeah,
MOV, the most common one.
I couldn't even remember what GPT stood for anymore already.
That's new. Come on.
Generative,
That's on everybody's fingertip.
Generative, I forget what the P stands for.
Pre-trained.
Transformer?
Transform. Yeah.
You very quickly forget how to decode these acronyms. At least I do.
Sure, because they turn into just their own words.
Yeah. So, but anyway, if you watch, it's going to be close to 3 hours. So,
well, anyway, I'll look for it and I'll upload it as soon as possible, so you don't have to keep it up on the net.
Well, the thing is, once it's up on Google Drive, that nothing else is going to be there. But I have to be able to take it off of Google Drive.
That's what I meant.
I don't want to leave it there.
I'll be able to unload it, so that you can reuse that space.
Yeah, because next time I'll have to reuse it. So.
Yep. I might do that here at the lounge while I grab a bite to eat.
All right. So I forget how long first it has to translate it to MP4. That takes, I don't know.
And depending on your machine, it could take 5 minutes to 45 minutes or longer.
This is a 2012 iMac, so or 2013 iMac. I don't know how fast it is. And then the upload is 100 megabits a second. So, it'll probably be middle of the afternoon before it's up there.
Okay. I'll look for it and then I'll upload it this evening when I see it.
All righty. Anything else?
Okay, Barry.
Bon appetit.
Not for now.
Okay.
I got other stuff on my list, but that can be for future meetings.
So I'm going to go ahead and save the chat and save the transcript. Save the transcript. Where's the save the chat department? There it is, save the chat. There is no save the AI companion. They're saved. All righty. One last words?
Nope.
All right. Bye-bye.
Got it. Talk to you later, Barry. Bye-bye.